Starting in front of the appraiser, the strict patriarch kept a little Noah near him and demanded an immediate verdict on the hidden gift of the boy. The 5-year-old Noah, the heir of the Gymnona genus, looked with wide open his eyes at a confused tester who stumbled on every word. Finally, gathering freedom, the appraiser announced that the only thing to show the ability of Noah was to decipher the runes, and no other force in it was awakened. The Aldheims clan belonged to the oldest and most revered magic nobility, praising generations of outstanding sorcerers and unique arcade techniques. So everyone expected that Noah's firstborn would show a striking talent, capable of raising the glory of the genus even higher. But the truth destroyed all hopes. Lord Gamehild, the head of the family, was stunned. How his son may not have a spark of combat magic or the control of elements, the pride of their dynasty. The embarrassed Noah looked at his father, not understanding anger until he thundered his name with a barely restrained rage. The patriarch's palm of his son's cheek, and his roar came to the whole house. The guy disappeared the family before the whole world. In frenzy, he asked how Noah could tarnish the name of the clan, which was worshipped by the whole magical society. When the guy wanted to say something, his father stopped him and renounced him. Hildendund moved to the door without listening to the timid protests of the appraiser. After him, only the tearful apologies of Noah and the deaf echo of the steps were heard. The estate was wrapped in heavy silence, as if the walls themselves kept breathing in fear. In a few days, when Noah was walking the corridor, a maid approached him. But as soon as he greeted her, she rushed to the way, not to meet him. From that moment on, every servant passed his way, and Noah understood. His father ordered to remain silent. However, their worried views were doubtful. Trying not to cause condemnation, the guy remained flawlessly polite, hoping that courtesy would break the ice. But no voice answered him. Deprived of the company, he was alone in the spacious library, where he plunged into books that for a moment the pain and gave distant dreams. One day, sitting just on the floor of the library and absorbing the next book, Noah suddenly surprised his eyes. He realized that he was reading an extremely complex text. Is it not related to its ability to decipher? The next morning he stood in front of the bookcase, trying to choose the next one, and read everything that was in this room. Then the guy went out into the inner yard and sat on a stone slab, looking thoughtfully, until his gaze accidentally fell on a strange stone. Going closer, he understood. It is not an ordinary stone, but a plate with my mysterious symbols. He soon sat at the table and carefully moved these signs to a piece of paper, carefully fixing each detail. Later, resting near the stove, he tried to decipher the symbols and concluded that they were pointing to a repository or ancient book. In the end, he noticed that even on the stove, there are additional signs that should also be taken into account for unraveling. The month has passed. In his room, surrounded by sheets with notes, Noah finally finished deciphering all the symbols engraved on the stove. He hurried to the librarian and, following the instructions, put the books exactly as it was stated in his notes. At the same moment, one of the cabinets clasped and opened, opening the hidden passage. Amazed to the depths of his soul, Noah was cautious. He did not believe that it really happened. Going down the hidden stairs, he saw shining stones in the walls. It was exactly the magical light mentioned in the ancient books. At the strange door, he again saw familiar symbols, and, after reading the inscription, realized, behind them hiding the library of ancient knowledge. The doors opened slowly, and a huge hall with shelves which died under the weight of ancient folly appeared. Despite the fact that the room was underground, it stopped in a bright magical radiance, creating an almost unrealistic atmosphere. Noah did not read any of these books, and they all seemed like treasures. On the central table, Noah noticed a massive folio, whose shabby cover herself called to touch her secret. As he raised volume, he felt in him encoded complex magic and, holding his breath, unfolded the first page. The text was written in a bizarre language. It will take weeks to grasp it, and the guy had enough time. In memory, the sentence of his father was heard. "You are no longer my son." And tears were quietly squeezed on the cheeks. The gift of Dekrithra, which was despised by the father, was the only refuge and at the same time the key to the future. In battle magic, it is almost useless, but for understanding the universe is invaluable, because the decryption could rewrite the basics of reality and build a new architecture of being. All this is due to the tiny symbols that most do not even pay attention to. It was they who directed his life, though Noah did not realize all their strength. He remembered only one thing. At 15 years, he will have to leave the estate forever. Without combat talent, he will never head the genus Aldheim. This was a harsh axiom. On that day, the guy was sitting in the hidden library among the piles of yellowing volumes, reflecting the last step. He finally stood up, feeling that this evening would be farewell to these walls and children's memories. The eldest son turned 15, so according to ancient custom, he was no longer eligible to stay under a family roof. Gathering the spirit, Noah bypassed the mansion and thanked each servant for their quiet support all these years. Servants passed silently. He was used to this icy silence but still bowed to everyone. He did not, but sincerely. Their hidden kindness once saved him from loneliness. It was she who lit a desire to treat people as she dreamed of being treated. Stripping the corridor, Noah was comforted by the idea that life continues until he is faithful to his own heart. He barely stepped into the yard as a mocking voice came behind his back. He was a younger brother, Glenn. Glenn smiled and stated that the expulsion of Noyev was making him an undisputed heir to the head of the genus. He praised combat magic and the possession of a fiery element. Noah only nodded calmly. He knows all this. The guy acknowledged, without special talent, no spell would obey, and this is a fact. But he recalled that despite their different mothers, they remain brothers, and therefore will not want Glenn evil. The younger only boiled, called Noah's home shame, and stated that he would not miss the failure. The laughter of his brother reminded the parents of his parents. With a light smile, he wondered what Glenn pleases in this. He answered simply. He shares his father's opinion. Noah is too stupid and also talentless in magic. Emphasizing the words, Glenn lifted his palm, and a flame broke out between his fingers. The first-level fiery ball curled up in his hand, demonstrating his strength and reminding his brother's worthlessness. But Noah looked quietly. In the glare of the flame he saw not defeat, but impetus to go his own, unknown way. The flame bullet twisted in Glenn's palm, and he sharply threw it straight into his brother. Noah recognized the power of brother magic, but was not going to allow the fire to at least touch himself. Instantly lifting the breath of the wind, he rejected the burning projectile sideways, scattering the flames into the sparks. He read all the hidden grimoires without medicine, gaining knowledge that existed outside the usual world. Its shake to decryption has discovered many archaic symbols, strikingly far from modern runes. Each sign of caught a whole palette of content and was soldered with enormous force. It was a real test. But the guy did not retreat. 10 years of work, and the runes grew with his consciousness, allowing to create without any spell. Grimoires of the ancestral repository revealed to him ancient magic, and she in turn conquered modern elements. Glenn screamed, looking for his fire. Noah just smiled, hinting that it was dangerous to play flames here. The burned brother roared, "Continue and get away!" and rushed to the estate, leaving Noah himself. The boy was painful that they never became close, but not be avoided. Going to the gate, he realized. This moment was inevitable and ripe for a long time. All life has passed through books, and now it's time to see the world with your own eyes. First of all, he should earn a journey, he decided, squeezing a few coins in his pocket. The adventurer path is the only path that gives the will of his wings and magic. At first, Noah had to leave the Aldheim's lands and get to the nearest adventurers. He leaned his native estate with his eyes and thanked his father for the past, whatever it may be. Turning, he moved in a quick step. Meanwhile, Glenn in the office boasted his father's exile. Lord nodded silently, accepting the news without any emotions. Glenn complained to everything and flew to the door. The father broke away from the papers, approached the window and stared at the distance for a long time. It is barely audible to whisper so that the sun no longer disgraced them. The relief refreshed his features, and in the meantime, Noah was moving towards a new test. Going, he felt a strange mixture of anxiety and delight before the unknown. In the humor trade quarter, the whirlwind of life captured his gaze, and he made a short break. The flows of people laughed, traded. Noah greedily swallowed his eyes. Kramar waved him, offering to taste the famous sandwich. The young man almost did not go beyond the estate. Noah stretched out the gold. The seller asked if he had a rich guest, and the guy replied that it was all his fortune. A little surprised, the shopkeeper released the rest, 99 silver, and handed the delicacy. In the view of the merchant, the assumption was given. Apparently, it is an exile from the House of Aldheim. Noah nodded silently, accepting a new status. On that day, Noah approached the cart standing by the road and asked the driver where they were heading. He, without breaking away from the affairs, replied that they were going to the level up and asked if Noah wanted to join. The guy thought for a moment. Level Up was in the eastern lands, in the territory of Waida. But in the end, he held out a few coins and sat in a cart. The cart has always seemed to him something mysterious and even romantic, the perfect place to start a new story. There were several men who looked at the newcomer with interest. Noah greeted and apologized for the surprise. He was only nodded, silently, but without hostility. The cart moved. For a while, one of the passengers asked why Noah decided to go to Level Up. He answered, He wants to join the Guild of Adventurers because he needs to make money. The man smiled and noted that the city is going well in the city now. Noah listened carefully. He continued. Once the town was poor, people began with the fact that they fertilized dry lands. Then he looked at Noah, surprised. The guy was well aware of the city's past that most forgot. He explained. He read it all in the books. The man introduced himself as Edgar and noted that few people know the history of Levelp. He also added that everyone in this cart is traders. Another man remembered that he could tell Noah about his youthful adventures. Noah was happy and willingly agreed to listen, and the interlocutor immediately began the story. Listening, Noah felt the value of real experience. Some things do not understand through books. They need to be survived. And he was glad that he was here, in this cart, among the living stories. Suddenly the cart stopped, and the driver looked hard in the distance. The horses began to be nervous. Edgar exclaimed, not understanding what was happening. Everyone jumped out of the cart and saw another Visa stopped ahead. There was a giant monster near him, who roared so that the earth trembled. Edgar, not hiding fear, called it a demon that attacked another's cart. Another man added, "It is a wind tiger, a high-class monster that rarely appears in these parts." Noah realized, the situation is really exceptional. People from the other cart have already fought with the monster, so they decided not to interfere in order not to worsen the situation. They returned to their cart. Edgar apologized, they say. Their participation would only increase the number of casualties. But suddenly Noah strongly stated that he would still go to the rescue. Everyone was looking in surprise. "How will you help? It's suicide." Noah thanked them for their care, but said he could not do otherwise, and jumped out of the cart. No one has ever supported him, and this pain left a deep mark in it. But now he understood. These people are the same as he, and they deserve a chance. Using soft landing skills, it has safely landed on the ground. Turning, he asked for a Visa to move on and thanked for interesting stories. Visa disappeared in the dust, and the monster was only even louder. Noah felt the crazy gusts of wind from the monster rolling on him, bringing the decisive moment. Noah knew that the wind tiger was the most dangerous in the sky, so he flew up to impose a monster favorable for himself. Looking down at the warriors, he remembered from the books, the beast should be pressed to the ground to limit his maneuverability. But the tiger has already hung in the air, preparing a devastating throw on any purpose below. Releasing the magic of the wind, Noah rapidly rose towards, taking the initiative. Having become closer, he began to circle in front of Pasha Monstri, forcing him to turn away from people. He urgently needed that the predator was only aimed at him, and it worked. The tiger, which loves air clashes, immediately switched all the rage to the young magician. Due to this, the earthlings got a few invaluable seconds of peace and able to retreat. When the beast was rushed forward, Noah evaded, looking for a way to strike a fatal blow. He has never used ancient offensive magic in battle, but there was nowhere. The guard threw his sword, but Noah did not have time to grab the blade. He flew down with a roar. The heart was walking, but he closed his eyes and concentrated the power of mysterious runes. When the tiger was shot for a moment, Noah reached forward, releasing the accumulated energy. Purple flames were escaped from the palm, surrounding the monster by a flickering ring. Giant runes broke out in the sky, and the flow of fire, like dragon breathing, devoured fur and flesh. The monster howled, flashed, and the ribbons, turning into ashes that was quietly pouring. The girl in the capture of the guard looked at the unusual purple flame. When the fire faded, Noah descended, exhausted, but with a feeling of relief in his chest. Going to a girl and a warrior, he received their sincere gratitude for their lives. Having apologized for the delay, the young man turned sharply and said quietly that he had to move on. Already turning away, Noah heard the girl calling him, asking to wait. She hesitated as long as she was worth it that the horse was whole and could be moved. The girl only nodded. When she looked, Noah took advantage of the magic and dissolved in the air, like a mirage. Surprised, she looked around, but the young man should be cool. Then the girl realized. Before her, Liban, there was a prominent magician, but his face seemed strangely familiar. Meanwhile, Noah was already on a rocky ledge, just overcome by a magical jump. The transfer depleted him, but the heart was warming. For the first time, someone thanked him sincerely. The feeling is unusual and warm. Remembering the former worthlessness and the path that the gift of decryption was magnified, Noah smiled confidently. After resting, he moved on to grow. At the same time, the events unfolded in the Highlands. Lord Hildenden bowed to the guests, thanking for a long and difficult journey to his possessions. Claudia responded with the same appreciation for the warm reception and kind invitation. This young lady is the second princess of the kingdom of Rasta, Claudia. Glenn, standing with his father, was confused. the beauty of the princess stunned. He decided that this graceful woman would certainly become him. Hildendund himself thought more pragmatically. Glenn's marriage with Claudia would strengthen his family influence. It was relied to hope that the son would not be disgraced. Smiling, Lord said that he was glad to have a safe road, and Claudia sighed. They were attacked by a wind tiger, a beast of the highest class. The stunned Hildendund asked how they survived. The guards wanted to blame the princess for unauthorized departure, but she confessed. She became bored in the palace. She wanted freedom. Recognizing the mistake, Claudia explained that the wandering magician rescued them, destroying the tiger with the only flash of purple fire, Lord of Odoropes. There is no such spell in modern magic. No well-known magician has such a power. Claudia, smiling, added, the magician was teaching, with dark hair and stubborn spark in his eyes. And, looking at the Lord, she whispered, his name. Breaking the phrase, left the name in the air. Hearing the name of Noah, Hildendund Palp. Dark hair and mysterious strength coincided, but he rejected the idea that the clumsy son could have such magic. Claudia calmly noted that Noah mentioned at the reception in the castle Rostai, but Lord was just shot without giving a clear answer. After a brief reflection, Hildendund stated that there was no Noah in the family, and Glenn is long considered his eldest son. Glenn, with a smug look, added that he is also a fiery magician, and perfectly suits the role of the heir. The princess only cast an indifferent look at him, barely nodded, and apparently not impressed with his words. Having made a polite reverse, Claudia said that the question of marriage would postpone the return to investigate the Aldheim's house more carefully. She turned and went. The guards were embarrassed, and Lord escaped them with an alarming look. He understood that if the news of the expulsion of the eldest son spread, the honor of the genus is an irreparable spot. Lord waved his hand for the guardian's apology, and decided that it was necessary to find Noah as soon as possible, and turn until the princess made the final conclusions. Left with his son, Hildendund announced that he was going on the road, and Glenn should supervise the estate. The door closed. Glenn shouted, asking what would be with his dreamy political marriage and a beautiful bride. Meanwhile, Noah stood in front of a majestic building, a guild of adventure seekers, which he once saw only in his dreams. He first looked at her live, feeling the heart of the joyful chords of new opportunities. He cautiously looked at the facade, gained courage, and knocking, apologized for the uninvited invasion, crossed the threshold. Adventurers were talking inside. Someone advised the beginner to register first, while discussing urgent tasks in the hall. In the center of the room was a girl, calling for volunteers to go right now to the Levelope volcano. She reported that there was a monster S-class Fafnir, and Lady Siren was already trying to curb the fiery dragon. The adventurers were numb. This creature posed a threat to the whole kingdom of Rasta, and panic grew every moment. Some offered to help immediately. Others warned that with their forces it would only increase the loss. Someone reminded that the siren is the strongest in the guild, but this is not a reason to leave it. The girl in tears accused herself, and Noah realized, things are really bad. Noah realized the deadly threat and wondered, not to go personally to the volcano to support Lady Siren? A moment later, he firmly announced that he was heading to Levelop Volcano to release Siren from his paws. The hall subsided immediately. The receptist girl was stunned by what the rank he was the adventurer. Slightly discontinuing, Noah acknowledged that he has not yet been registered in the guild, and has no official title. The silence became depressing, and he realized that their distrust is quite natural without a certificate of adventure seeker. Already retreating half a step, he felt a debate about the hopelessness of the situation is becoming more and more, and he heard what desperate warmth everyone was talking about Lady Siren. Her defeat would be a common disaster. Assessing the power of Fafnir, Noah realized, leaving the witch alone means to condemn both her and the kingdom. Remembering the victory over the wind tiger, he strengthened that the ancient runes would overcome the dragon. Sighing, he finally decided to go immediately until it is too late. At this time, on a hot slope, Labor-loopy Lady Siren stood in front of Fafnir, squeezing the sword to the white. She still did not understand how the giant dragon was here, and she was not going to retreat. The monster rose the wall. His nostrils were released clubs of hellish heat, which rolled up with waves. The next moment, the mountain trembled from the wild roar, and the flames flared up. The fiery mercenary was scattered with an avalanche, pouring the slope of burning sparks. Siren felt that at such a level of forces, she will not hold on to herself, although despair has not yet mastered it. Suddenly there was Noah. Without looking back, he asked if Lady Siren was in front of him, and hope broke out in her gaze. The stunned, she clung, trying to understand who this dark-haired young man with a confident voice is. Without a second, Noah brought out a giant amethyst rune in the air that flashed. The rune turned a transparent shield. When the dragon dumped a stream of fire, the barrier absorbed the flames and kept them intact. Thick smoke clubs covered the arena, barely looking through the silhouettes of two despair and a predatory dragon. Noah felt the real power of Fafnir and realized that's why it was S-class. Even the absolute fire is powerless against this scales. Serena, holding her breath, looked at Noah and asked what kind of wonder he had just called. Suddenly, realizing that she did not know the stranger, she exclaimed who he was and how he got here. Noah briefly called and added that he came here to become a real adventure seeker. Without hesitation, he stepped towards the dragon, though Serena warned, "A newcomer is a pure suicide." In the next moment, the young man again directed a flurry of runic energy simply in the chest of the monster. The blow shook Fafnir back. He roared, surprised and annoyed with such boldness. Noah froze. The attack was noticeably weaker than during a battle with a wind tiger. Suddenly, a heavy voice was heard that he demanded who he was and whether the dragon was in front of him. Puzzled, Noah looked at Serena. She asked if she really called him a monster. The same voice repeated, calling Noah and interested in the nature of his magic. He spoke Fafnir himself, woke up with age, old seal and annoyed invasion. Noah had a bizarre mosaic in his head. Did he all the time talking to the dragon? The monster, laughing, acknowledged that it was not expected that someone was able to talk to him at all. Noah was finally lost, and Fafnir acknowledged that he was also surprised by such a meeting. The young man apologized for an insidious attack, explaining that he had no hostile intentions to either the dragon or the people. Fafnir was distrustful, suspecting people came to imprison him again. Noah denied. Serena wanted to destroy the fire dragon, so he intervened to save her from uneven clashes. Assured that he would not harm, Noah heard the dragon squeezing his eyes and asks if he can really believe his words. Serena, having heard a strange conversation, exclaimed whether Noah was really a balakoon with Fafnir. She confessed that she did not understand a word. Then, they say, the ancient monsters. Noah, smiling, explained, "They speak the ancient dragon language, only accessible." Fafnir sighed and said that he was once too dangerous, so he was sealed for centuries. Noah felt a good heart in it. The dragon even joked that he was herbivorous, so he was not at all prone to destruction. Serena is still stunned. Even a silent dragon remains a threat to the kingdom, and people do not leave him alone. Then Noah suggested that Fafnir conclude a servant's contract to protect him from new prison attempts. The dragon was surprised and asked if a person was really ready to become his owner and defender. After evaluating the young man's sincerity, Fafnir agreed and asked to conclude an agreement. Noah, without hesitation, wrote out complex runes in the air. Clear light wrapped the wind on a slope. The air flows gathered into the spiral, lifting dust and ashes around. Serena, through the storm, barely looked at the glow of runes with a dragon. When the gusts subsided, she realized the contract was concluded. Fafnir became a minion Noah. The dragon, now the fifth smaller, settled on the young man on his shoulder, quietly moving his wings. Fafnir confessed that the ritual had passed easier than expected. Noah was a true monster of power. Serena surprised his tiny appearance. Noah explained that the contract automatically reduces the servant. They introduced themselves to each other, and the princess was first able to speak with the dragon. Fafnir, satisfied with the murmur, was glad that he is now not so easy to recognize and be imprisoned again. Noah, glowing with joy, announced that he had received not only a servant but also a friend. The dragon cheerfully confirmed. Within a few hours, Serenis were surrounded in Seren's guild by adventurers, stunned by the news of a lightning mission. Grateful adventurers surrounded Serena, sincerely concerned with her safety. One girl, almost crying, apologized, considering herself guilty of everything, but the witch was gently assured that everything ended well and you should no longer worry. Noah, watching the back, smiled, understanding how valuable his help was, and quietly moved to the exit. Having caught up at the door, Serena said that the guild report only mentioned the success of the mission, without any dragons. Noah nodded and thanked for caution. When asked where he spends, the young man confessed that he had almost no money and probably sleep in the sky. Fafnir, when she was on his shoulders, indifferently said that he was indifferent to where to spend the night. Serena kindly invited them to both, promising a warm roof and a delicious dinner, because she boasts her own culinary skills. In the evening in her home, the table died from dishes that immediately aroused the brutal appetite of the guests. Noah admired each piece, shouting compliments. And Fafnir, having a good liquor with him, gambled wings, confirming his words. Serena, like a pleased hostess, laid a supplement with a smile, watching friends enjoying dinner. Under joking praise, she confessed that he was still amazed by the appearance of Noah. who, as if from the ground, tamed the dragon with one wave of the rune. Red. Noah explained that everything is due to ancient magic. Fafnir was insulted that the attack was painful, and the young man immediately apologized for his carelessness. Serena wondered if he really wanted to become an adventurer, and suggested tomorrow to register in the guild tomorrow. Noah gratefully agreed, contacting her Mrs. Serena, but she asked just to call her by name. He nodded, and she had fun that she would do without the name, if it is more convenient. The morning came unnoticed. In guild, Noah received a questionnaire and carefully studied the graphs, carefully filled each field. Returning the sheet, he heard the clarification: whether Fafnir was really his official assistant. Noah lifted his shoulder with a dragon and confirmed it. Clerk looked at a miniature creature, and Noah shook his head, assuring that everything was written. He passed the Fafnir collar with a contract symbol so that the locals did not accept him as a wild monster. The dragon, satisfied with the blinking, thanked, and Serena noted that the accessory suits him as best as possible. Noah quietly whispered Fafnir, which he put into the metal of the Flea of Strength, so that she can withstand when he returns to real size. In a few minutes, the clerk returned to the Trinity, apologizing for the delay and preparing to announce the results of the registration. The registering girl apologized for the delay, spent them to the Hall of Talents, and Noah, looking at the door, felt the bitter memories of the past test returned. Stripping the corridor, Fafnir caught the tension of a friend and asked the cause. Noah confessed that once this procedure turned into a humiliating defeat. In the room, they were met by a chunky man in round glasses, politely greeted, and invited the young man to sit opposite. He called Carl, the main assessor of the guild, and Noah briefly introduced himself and prepared for the check. Carl put a crystal ball on the table, inside which the threads of energy flicked, attracting the interested look of the young man. In an instant, the Azur exclaimed that Noah revealed a rare decipher talent, and the young man lowered his gaze in surprise. Carl further confessed that in 10 years of work, he had not seen such high strength in this area. Noah is numb. The gift condemned by his father was an exceptional ability, worthy of respect. The Assessor explained that the decorator's talent occurs once by generation, and is able to turn the world's knowledge. He advised to choose a calmer career, but Noah politely refused. The risk of the adventure path did not frighten him. Leaving the office, Noah exhaled reliefly. Fafnir was shining, they say. Such a gift of fate can really be proud. Serena brought them to the quest board, and explained that beginners with rank F should start with the collection of simple resources. Noah chose a task in the Eastern Forest, to collect 10 healing herbs for a reward 4 silver. The dragon wondered how much food would buy for this amount. The young man laughed. 4 big sandwiches would be enough, and Serena wished caution. Fast in the shade of old trees, Fafnir noted that finding the right plants in such a hut would be difficult. Noah confidently denied that only the right tool and a little care were needed. He reached out and activated the spell of a material detection. The herbs were lit by a soft glow among the greens. The dragon watched in surprise, calling it a miracle worthy of ancient legends. Taking the next leaves, Noah joked that all merit belonged to the authors of ancient magic, not to him. Fafnir nodded, approved. Returning to the guild with full bags, they saw Serena and Clerk preparing to accept the quest and calculate the well-deserved salary. Just in front of them on the table stood a basket giant, tightly filled with gathered herbs. Noah explained that, in addition to the healing plants, he took some more useful spices. Serena only nodded with a smile. Carl, considering the contents of the magnifying glass, could not believe that the young man had extracted so much potion in such a short time. He recognized even a few magical herbs made of Pazio, collected in a perfect state. Going. The Assessor announced that the first task of Noah was accomplished perfectly. The young man thanked the high rating. Carl confessed with sincere enthusiasm. He did not expect such a result from a simple decoder. Noah, blushing, replied that only a beginner. But Carl added that most newcomers spend the south to find at least a third of such a crop. Interested, the Assessor asked what quest the guy planned further. Noah shrugged, they say. He had not yet decided. Carl sighed and suggested a special task. Noah, leaning his head, agreed to listen to the details. He seriously stretched the parchment, explaining that the young man would help the guild very much if he took this search quest. The text includes: in the Eastern Forest, you need to find a rare magic flower. The recommended rank is B, and the reward is 5 platinum coins. Carl specified, this flower is the key to the elixir of life capable of treating the most severe ailments. Noah recalled the legends of the omnipotent potion. Having realized that his rank was only E, the young man doubted, and the Assessor assured that it was allowed, and all the risks he assumes. The embarrassed Noah asked why Carl insisted so, because the rates are high and the consequences were unpredictable. Then the assessor frankly confessed that his daughter is tormented by an incurable ailment, and doctors are powerless. Sworn in a sad way, Carl continued. He turned to the best healers of the level up. None helped. The only hope is the elixir of life. He has already won the punner, holy water and tea of mermaids. The flower itself happens once or twice a year. No one has found it in recent years, so Carl has great hopes for Noah's amazing search gift. Looking a young man in his eyes, he emphasized that he is personally a quest customer, and this is a question of life and death for him. Carl sincerely hopes that Noah will not refuse and save his daughter from a relentless illness. He sighed deeply. Noah realized the weight of the request, and despite the risk, he made a call to save the daughter of Carl. He noted that the disease belongs to the realm of medicine, and ancient magic is able to settle its magical nuances. Before moving on the flower, Noah wished to personally inspect Carl. Carl invited them with relief after work. The gathering broke the excited man who broke into the hall and called Carl loudly. Running, he announced the disaster with Mrs. Charles. Noah's views, Serena and Fafnir, were immediately fulfilled. Carl Star-Goloff rushed home, almost knocking the door from the loops, and Noah kept side by side, catching his every step. In the house, they met alarmed Sarah and held them to arrest, where the doctor was powerlessly leaning over the unconscious girl. Sarah explained that Charles had suddenly fainted, and the doctor spread his hands without understanding the reasons. When Noah asked the words, the doctor cuts off him sharply, but the young man calmly insisted. He suggested the syndrome of curing of magical meridians, a purely magical pathology that medicine is not capable of bypassing. Noah explained that mana is constantly circulating the body, and the blockade of channels causes loss of consciousness. Carefully touching Charles, he served a soft stream of force. The young man added, relieves the symptoms temporarily, and complete healing is possible only through the elixir of life from the same flower. The girl's breathing was leveled. Noah stated that he immediately went on the flower, but Serena noted that she would be thrilling and dangerous to go alone. She insisted on accompanying him. Carl recalled the search artifacts, but it was not time to wait. Serena explained that the locators would not have time to bring, and Noah firmly replied that he would find a flower without tools. The couple gratefully blessed them, begging to be careful, and they hurried outside. Noah activated a spatial jump, reached out by Serena and ordered him to hold on. In the outbreak of light, both disappeared, leaving an alarming estate behind. The cool air of the eastern forest greeted them with shadows of giant trees. Fafnir sowed nearby, preparing for search. Noah caused the fleece to catch the most subtle trace of the flower aura, and their dangerous mission began. In a moment, they found themselves in the very thick of the forest, and Noah announced that they would continue to run, activating the search for materials to find a dreamy magical flower. Turning to Serena, he asked whether she was a little opposed to crossing the cross, and the girl, smiling, just nodded. Noah turned on the acceleration. His feet were detached from the ground. Two friends slipped between the trunks, leaving behind a barely noticeable strip of wind and rustling leaves. They knew that the magic flower blooms only in a special cell filled with concentrated mana. Fafnir, sitting on his shoulders, shouted that this place had once belonged to the fairies for hundreds of years, and the wonder was not visible nearby. If the flowers grow fairies and they disappeared, it turns out they were abducted. Or something is much worse with them. Suddenly Serena, having straightened, grabbed his sword, felt a foreign presence. The dragon praised her wonderful sensitivity. A silhouette, which quickly came from the trunks, was coming from the density. There was a giant creature with a trident corner on the head, stunningly growling. Serena immediately waved a blade, took a fighting rack and was ready to meet. In a moment, she rushed forward and cut the monster in half with one incredibly powerful attempt. Fafnir climbed up and released a solid flow of fire, burning the remains and possible threats around. Noah, standing aside, just clung to his eyes, affected by the speed and accuracy of their actions. He confessed that he did not notice how the monster was so close, and called it the perfect teamwork. Serena winked with a smile. They say a newcomer is still lacking in practice, and Fafnir added that the experience of battles is a separate science. The sky, meanwhile, darkened, covering the forest with twilight and shadows that were cut between trees. And cured, Serena reminded that they were still without a flower. Noah, closing his eyes, listened to the air and caught a weak response from mana. He pointed to the deep hut like a compass, and they moved behind a shimmering internal signal. Finally, the trail brought them to a quiet surface of a hidden lake surrounded by silver willows. Serena slid her eyebrows. wondering why a rare flower should grow here in such an atypical place. But probably, this is her secret. Thinking over a strange location, Serena asked why the flower grows here. Noah replied that although it is not a water plant, the most powerful whirlwind of mana goes from the bottom of the lake. Fafnir tilted his head, catching a barely audible trace of Faik magic. Noah confirmed that the search response of the flower comes from the same point. Serena sighed and agreed to explore the place, though not to swim. Noah was stepping forward because the task is more important than fear. The girl shouted, "Wait!" But the young man just smiled, they say, examined the surrounding area, and boldly stepped directly on the water. A transparent air cover broke out around him, like a glass sphere that separates it from the cold surface. Sliding under the thickness, Noah plunged like a fish driven by an invisible wind. On the shore of Serena, she sighed. Impulsive but confident, the element seems to listen to every movement. At the depth, he again activated the detection, listening to the pulse of the ancient energy that was heard through the silt. On the very bottom, a dark clot glowed, whose aura contrasted with calm sand. Fafnir asked that it, and Noah recognized the spatial fault, a rare echo of ancient magic. The young man explained that such portals are sowing distant worlds, and who created this, a mystery, worth the chronicle. The dragon noted that such witchcraft is only a fairy, so their disappearance is probably related to fault. Noah tried to approach, but the invisible barrier rejected him as if the stone wall. Fafnir suggested that the flame shield punch and the fire touched the water, went out without a trace. Without seeming, Noah asked for a moment and focused on the runes of destruction in his palms. The mana glow pierced the obstacle and the barrier cracked, crumbling sparks like an icy bark. At the same moment, the dragon turned sharply to the young man, and Noah raised his eyebrows in surprise, not understanding the changes. Fafnir warned, "A creature is coming from the darkness, so it's time to gain combat experience." Sleeping, Noah sharpened his hearing, catching the rush of mana and a muted roar of steps under the thick water. In a moment, he determined the direction, from the darkness of the creature, and the light waves of the lake trembled, warning of the approach of danger. Noah's eyes were rounded, and he exclaimed, recognizing the threat. The monster gripped just behind their backs. A giant sea snake emerged from the darkness of the lake. The fangs glowed with rage, and the mouth waited for blood. His body spiral-wrapped friends, ready to absorb any prey with one sip. Noah and Fafnir froze, thinking about the movements. The gaze of the beast burned hatred. The scales glowed with enemy mania. Despite the deadly ring, the young man stood unwavering, like a hero in the heart of a legend. He seemed miraculously that the sea beast was settled in the fresh lake, far from his ocean house. The snake roared, indignant. They say his peace was broken by the elders. He grunted peacefully until people began to flutter underwater in the middle of the night. Noah realized, the monster speaks the language of monsters and remembers the mysterious spirit of darkness. At his request, the serpent replied that that spirit of forcefully pulled him out of the depths and did not know the details. The young man thanked, keeping calm in dangerous proximity from predatory teeth. The snake was surprised by the fearlessness of the mortal. Noah explained that the decantator's talent enables him to understand any language. Raising his hands, he assured he seeks to avoid fights and asks to skip them further. The monster smiled mockingly. It is easier to eat uninvited guests than to listen to a request. The tail squeezed again around Noah, but the guy activated the heavenly step and escaped from the stone loop into the air. Fafnir straightened his wings and ordered Noah not to delay. He holds the snake himself. The young man wanted to deny, and the dragon reminded that Carly was bitter every moment. The flower was needed immediately. Noah gratefully touched the scales of a friend, silently promising to return. He flew over the lake, and Fafnir remained face to face with an angry predator. One thing in the young man's chest was beating. Every minute without the elixir steals a chance for life. Suddenly the coats of the sea snake whistled nearby, almost touched Noah. The predator opened his mouth, trying to grasp the guy, and Fafnir immediately met him with a fiery whirlwind. After a burning blow, the monster coughed and lay down in defense, and the dragon burned so that it did not stick again. Make sure that Fafnir was holding the snake, Noah went to the spatial fault. A flower had to hide behind him. Although he did not know where the portal was leading, there was no doubt. It was his goal. A moment, and the young man landed in the new world, feeling the soil of usual under his feet. The bright sun poured a strange landscape, as if torn from another dimension. A silent forest rose around, and Noah caught that he had fallen not only in another space, but also at another time. The illumination came. It is a pocket created by ancient magic, where the usual laws are violated. Suddenly, Muffled soaps and a trembling whisper were taken behind. Looking back, he saw a frightened girl sitting on the ground, hugging his knees. As he approached, Noah noticed scratches on her body, and carefully laying his palm, directed the healing menu. The girl's eyes were wide open. The wounds were tightened and the pain subsided, and she barely rose. Noah apologized for the unexpected touch, explaining that he used medical magic. "Thank you," she called the fairy and looked at the man in surprise. He also introduced himself to a novice traveler and said he possesses a rare gift of decryption of languages. The fairy nodded. Now she realized how Noah communicates with her without barriers. She said that once her people lived in the forest of Level Up until a gloomy spirit appeared. The dark essence caught the fairies, locking them in this space cut from reality. So finding a charming flower and destroying the seal is a chance to save the entire fake community. She explained that there was only one thing left. All the other fairies were locked under a huge ancient tree. Noah was surprised, not understanding why the spiritual darkness of the captive Faeli and what he was going to do with them. The girl also did not know, but felt that it was something more than the usual captivity. At her request, he replied that he was looking for a charming flower to cure a difficult girl. The fairy smiled and said that magical flowers were really blooming here. She reached on her shoulder and called for a gesture to follow her. They approached a giant trunk, where in a tar trap, weeded hatred fairies were motionless. Their wings trembled, the forces melted. The dark cocoon restrained the smallest movement. Noah rushed forward, and his fairy shrunk his sleeve, warning, "It is worth approaching, and the attacker will appear immediately." Indeed, from the shadows he escaped a bronze goal, decorated with a trident horn, and a burning nucleus in his chest. The girl explained, "It is a forest guard left in the guard of the forest until the back of the spirit of darkness, and he ruthlessly destroys strangers." Noah realized, in order to release the fairies and get the flower, he will have to overcome this vest. He promised Fi to release her sisters and ordered her to hide until the battle continued. "Thank you." She disappeared in the crown, and the young man remained on himself with a stone ear. Assessing the opponent, Noah noticed the ancient runes on his chest and realized they need to be overwritten. But first, the monster should be immobilized. He crashed from the rear, but the goal, feeling the surge of mana, turned sharply and rushed forward, leaving no place for maneuver. The next step, the giant crushed one of the rare flowers, and Noah was cold. It became critical of time. He grabbed the young man with iron and threw up the young man as if the nucleus from the catapult. The fairy screamed of horror, watching Noah's body falling from heaven. Fortunately, the ancient runes woven in the mantle of the impact, but the young man understood. He would not survive the second such attack. Flying, he activated the trajectories chain, adjusting the flight and preparing a counter, offensive until the giant had reacted. The earth was approaching rapidly, but Noah was already thinking about how to break the golem's runes and save flowers with fairy. By activating the trajectories chain, Noah rejected the fall, slightly sliding on the ground, and in a moment he jumped again, whirling around the golem. He was aware that the monster cannot be allowed to trample the valuable flowers that save life. The young man released absolute fire. A flurry of flames merged from heaven to the bronze body. But the flames just glowed the surface, no crack, no damage. Noah froze, not believing the eyes. The passionate tongues only poured the golem, and the scales of metal remained whole. He immediately realized, the guard is much stronger than he could expect. It is not ordinary stone or tree. Without delay, the guy changed tactics, directing the magic shot directly into the hardy nucleus. The fairy shouted at horror. Her fragile heart trembled for a brave man who rushed at such a risk. Then the ghoul lowered the bulky fists on the young man. The blow promised instant death. The rude paw stuck, and Noah threw like a stone in a storm. The broken edge nuded when he was on his feet. The surface of the enemy was a real metal. Relying on the rock, he was looking for a way out. Magic bounces like water from oil. Mithril is what this giant is covered, a material that almost does not perceive the magic of even the highest rank. The breasts were squeezed. Favorite runes are powerless, and time is less time. Before him stood not just an enemy, but an almost impenetrable armor from Mithril, a real bastion against magicians. That is why Guard was considered the main obstacle of fairies. He could not be overcome by simple spells. The ghoul lifted a huge hand for a new blow. Noah strictly recorded every movement, thinking of a single chance. Huge fingers closed the space. The blow had to fall on the guy. Noah was going to use a spatial jump to slip, and seconds were treacherously thawed. The fist roamed nearby, breaking the rock. The explosion of the fragments threw Noah back, falling asleep with dust and fragments of stone. The ghoul did not give a moment at a break. The next blow to the shield was put on Noah into the chest like a stone lightning. Everything froze. The fairy cried away from horror, seeing how the young man faints, choking pain. Sading on the cold earth, Noah felt the forces left the body and the limbs were crumbling. An iron fist rose above it. Another blow, and the mission will be lost with life. Through the stretched dust, he drowned his eyes in the runes on the chest of the golem. To erase them is the only way to victory. It is impossible to escape. While the guard is alive, the fairies are doomed, and the flower will remain unattainable. Squeezing his teeth, Noah got up. Although every movement responded with a burning pain, there was nowhere to retreat. If my gift was a combat, it flashed into my head, and immediately, the power of the decoder is also a weapon, just another one. He shook, but did not fall. The most powerful ancient magic was powerless against the mithril shell, but the spirit has not yet broken. Take a deep breath. Noah lifted his palm. Absolute flame. Ruby runes broke out in the air. The pillar of the fire was rushed forward, but, hitting the armor, only left dark furrows, without destroying. He immediately realized that the formula needs to be changed. Otherwise even the purest flames will remain with hot scenery. He plunged into memory, looking for an alternative in ancient characters that he once translated at night. The fingers drew a new pattern in the air, mixing the runes of destruction with the ruling of splitting. A unique combination. Magic flowed from the palm of hand, like mercury, aimed at the core of the creature. It seemed that it was touched by the very essence of the monster. I can't break here. The thought of the moon beat in the temples. There will be no medication without victory. There will be no salvation of Carly. But suddenly, the forces began to melt, as if someone had suffered Manu from his veins. The lungs were squeezed with an invisible hoop. The fiery lines were dull, and the breast was cold in the chest. The energy source was exhausted faster than it could weave the spell. It was the feeling that the magic itself, which was still rushing forward, now pulled out of it, treacherously melting in the air. Noah realized, the stalk of force is on the verge, and if he does not find another tactic, the avalanche of bronze and mithril finally buries it at the bottom of this forest. The unexpected attack of weakness forced Noah to kneel again. The forces were melted, like water through his fingers. The ghoul, angry, suddenly increased in size, covering the young man with a threatening shadow. The bronze giant rose above him like a stone mountain, ready to erase everything living around. Noah, breathing, looked at the ear, while the fairy in a panic called him named, losing his horror. The diaper before her eyes dark, the consciousness slipped, and the body became disobedient and difficult, like lead. The constant hum was suddenly changed by a quiet rustle, as if someone had flushed through the old pages. Before the inner vision, a folio was filled with ancient glyphs that glowed with their own yellow glow. From the book, he was in the original magic. Each sign pulled out that the source of the world had spoken to it. There was neither the earth nor the sky around, only the limitless air in which this manuscript world library was hung. Noah saw a section of a composite, similar to a mithril, and suddenly realized, here lies the key to victory. The text described the formulas of protective enchantments, brought to the limit, and mentioned the spirit of darkness as their original creator. Although it is unclear why the book appeared right now, it was impossible to look away from these lines. The fingers touched the glow of rose. The mind poured into them the desire to rewrite the very essence of the anti-magic properties of mithril. The text stated, mithril absorbs magic when crystalline is unchanged. Noah decided to change the lattice, allowing energy to go through. Concentrating, he copied the symbols, replacing the runes on the runes of resonance, absorbing a new formula in his hands. The power was shuddered as if the dragon was awake, and the folio, emitting the last flash, melted in the shimmer of light. On the cover he managed to shine the title, Code of Transmutations, before the pages dissolved in unsaid. The real sound returned to his ears. The wings of the fairy's wings and its excited exclamations were pulled Noah back to life. A small creature waved his wings just over him, trying to lift it behind the cloak collar, although she trembled from tension. Sweatless and disoriented, Noah asked if he was still lying in this world, returning his crumbs of consciousness. Suddenly, everything was frozen when the ghoul, fiercely growling, rushed forward, squeezing a huge fist. He was moving at incredible speed, but the tiny fairy managed to pull Noah sideways, saving for a moment. Having come to his senses, the young man realized that this fragile creature protected him from death. Thanks to the rescue, he assured that everything was under control. But the fairy shook his head. She pointed to the golem, which was constantly moving, shining with monolithic plates, ready for the next stroke. With the despair of the fairy, Noah was drawn further, convincing, "This enemy does not overcome. It is necessary to retreat." The young man did not take a look from the bronze community, remembering the bizarre code of transmutations revealed to him. He wandered the ferry with a light barrier, ordering to hide, and felt a pulse of strange confidence in his chest. Recognizing that the census of reality requires incredible power, Noah still decided to take the risk. He lifted his palm, and his heart was crazy. The giant had already lifted his hand for a fatal blow. There was nowhere to retreat. The tiny spark of hope in the eyes was the last stronghold of indomitability. The young man whispered the formula, relying on a new runic scheme that had to at least weaken the armor. The flame jet hit exactly into the chest of the guard, looking for ancient characters that fed its protection. Noah did not seek to destroy the vest. It was enough to damage the runes to break the impermeable barrier, but the result exceeded the hope. The goal, without getting rid of, crumbled like a clay toy. Everything subsided. Noah frozen, contemplating the giant hole in the armor, where a moment ago pulled the invulnerable core. The fairy, amazed, exclaimed that something incredible happened. The very reality was subjected to the will of man. The young man stood in the wreckage, not believing that the power of the new formula was able to dramatically overwhelm the world. The scattered parts of the guard lay under their feet. The grueling battle ended with a lightning triumph. The question of the mysterious code was burning the mind, but Noah postponed the reflections. The fairy and the dreamy flower were waiting in front. Noah carefully dispersed the rusty lattice of the cages, pouring his freedom into his fingers. The latch gnawed and the door dissolved. As soon as the castle clicked, the bright swarm of the whirlwind fell, and the first rescued flew to the young man rapidly. She shook that she did not believe to see everyone alive, and emerald eyes flashed with pure joy. Smiling, Noah felt a warm gratitude warming his chest harder than any fire. The suspicious fairy whispered, "You are a man?" But the girlfriend assured that this boy could be trusted. Noah's gaze caught a new spatial fault under the root of the giant. The way back was already waiting, but first the flowers needed. The young man fell around him and hardly raked the layer behind a layer of soft turf. The sweat rolled his temples, and the fairies, holding his breath, followed each nerve movement of his hands. There were only broken petals. Despair squeezed the soul harder than the iron embrace of the golem. "Why am I here if I do not fulfill the promise?" The exclamation melted in the black grove, mixing with the rustle of the leaves. The wings were quietly rustling behind her back. The sustainable fairy with sadness touched her shoulder, sympathizing with despair. The darkness was thickened, and even the gentle lights of Phi Moral, as if the night had absorbed the last crumbs of light. The head of the giant snake was sprinkled from the lake. Serena monitored every alarming wave. Fafnir gloomily noted that the beast was breathing in the power of the darkness itself, and much stronger than it seemed. Serena suggested the influence of the spirit of darkness, but believed Noah would return alive and with a flower. The dragon reproached himself that he had left a friend in another's dimension, and doubt his heart painfully. But suddenly a calm voice came behind his back, a familiar and warm, like a dawn after a storm. "Sorry, lingered," Noah appeared, just a little smeared with soot and fatigue. Serena shuddered and showered his questions, looking for hidden wounds. Noah nodded reassuring. "Only scratches." And Fafnir, sighing lightly, silently established in his loyalty to his master. Noah pointed to the spatial fault nearby and explained that it just came out. Serena asked what happened to a charming flower. Sighing, he acknowledged that he could not find an instance. Seeing the horror in her eyes, Noah assured there was a chance, and asked Fafnir immediately to move them to the level up. The dragon agreed without hesitation. The young man added that he no longer left his own power. For the three of them, they settled on the back of Fafnir, and he climbed into the sky, taking a course on the city. During the flight, Fafnir was anxious about whether everything was fine without a flower. Noah nodded confidently. Suddenly, the young man exclaimed into the void, calling the invisible interlocutor to go out and not be afraid of a friendly dragon. The surprised Fafnir asked who he was talking to, because silence was dominating. Noah only whispered that you need to act quickly, otherwise it will be too late. Meanwhile, Carl, his wife and doctor were chatting near Carla's bed, whose weak illness did not release. The father whispered to the daughter, promising that Noah would come back with the medicine. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes and pointed to the shimmering light, hanging under the ceiling. Carl thought of delusions until he saw the winged silhouette of a tiny fairy, which slightly descended into the bed. Sarah froze, watching a radiant creature easily touch the face of her daughter. The fairy was gently greeted. Her voice sounded like a light summer wind and filled the room with warmth. She assured Carl that see the time already. and added that she should thank Mr. Noah for hope. Then she turned to her parents and firmly said that everything would end well, looking at their fear. The stunned Carl looked out the window, and the heart froze with surprise. A familiar dragon with riders, a beacon of hope in the dark sky, was spread over the roofs of the city. Along with him, the light that was driven by the night and giving a chance to a miracle. The sky shone with thousands of dancing fake lights like a starry rain. Hundreds, thousands of magic sparks flared and extinguished in the night darkness, like living fireflies. Carl clipped his eyes. Creatures from ancient legends suddenly appeared in his hometown. Noah, Serena, and Fafnir stood side by side, and joyful fairies were fluttering above them. The spectacle seemed unreal. Meanwhile, the same mysterious magical flowers that remained a secret for all have blossomed on Earth. The fairy, released by Noah, returned into the world and brought the power of nature to the gift. Fafnir, restraining surprise, said that he was not waiting for the ally with such a contract. Noah just smiled and stressed that time to cook the elixir. The hours of hard work on rare ingredients were fruit. The precious elixir of life was ready. Carl, once tight meridians curing syndrome, swallowed her potion and felt his pain and weakness. The girl hugged her parents. Tears of happiness shone in her eyes, and Serena watched a touching scene with a gentle smile. The stunned Carl approached Noah and, barely holding back emotions, bowed low, thanking for the salvation of his daughter. Noah, embarrassing, asked not to bow because he acted not for the sake of reward, but for the sake of help. The mother was gently explained to Carly that it was Noah who gave her a new life. The girl sincerely thanked the young man. The Noah looked at the family warmth that he never had, and felt a slight envy and sadness. He realized that such hugs would remain a dream for him, but at the same time did not want to overshadow someone else's happiness. Noah informed Carl that time to move on. The owner was surprised and invited everyone to stay for dinner. The young man hesitated, but Carl, gladly clapping his hands, said she was feeling great and dreaming of a juicy burger. Carl, smiling, offered to join Serena and others. The witch was eagerly agreed. Fafnir, seemingly proud, grunted that, despite the formidable look, he would not give up white apples, which caused a friendly laughter. The fairy, circling her heads, sniffed, interested in the smell of dishes, and gladly agreed to taste human goodies. The fairy looked at Fafnir with a starry look, and Noah felt the heart overwhelming the unusual heat. He looked at the audience, the people, the fairies, and the faithful dragon friend, and realized that they were now all related to a common story. Serena in the kitchen apron, along with Sarah and Carla, spell over dinner. This simple, cozy landscape to tears was moved by Noah. He realized he found his family, not blood, but the one who gained his own efforts, despite all the trials of the path. They all gathered at the table soon. Carl, glowing with happiness, kept the conversation lively, and her joy infected everyone. Noah understood that the quest was completed not only by him, but also by all who passed these 2 long hours of dangers side by side. Subsequently, the young man stood in the midst of the forest, completing the barrier's weaving. Now the dark spirit will no longer step here. He explained to the fairies that the magic shell wraps the whole grove, and nothing from the darkness would overcome it. One of the fairies smiled warmly and thanked, calling Noah almost embodied by the deity for their whole people. The young man was scratching when the fairies flew with a circle and folded his palms in the gesture of prayer. A wave of gratitude enveloped him with his head. When Noah with Fafnir gathered to move, the fairies were asked to visit more often. The young man gladly promised to return on the first opportunity. Later in Guild, Carl solemnly announced that the successful mission of Noah increases in his rank. He thanked for trust and support. Seeing a generous reward, Noah was confused and offered to spend some of the coins for further treatment of Charles. But Carl insisted. The guy made that money honestly. "Don't give up," he said, "is your merit." Meanwhile, an adventure seeker was lining up in the guard hall because new quests were announced. Noah drew attention to the unusually large accumulation of the people. Serena explained that a well-known archaeologist from Lodolf Archaeologist arrived in the city. The scientist sought experienced adventurers for the study of the eastern ruins, and the news was stunned by Noah. Serena, noticing his interest, emphasized that the talent for deciphering ancient languages makes the young man an ideal candidate. The intermediary girl exclaimed with despair that she was looking for such a specialist for so long. She explained. Arriving from Ludolf, she could not find anchorage of the necessary skills. Someone was special, not a casual newcomer. So, when a proposal was made in the crowd, a rapid hum was instantly raised around. Some from the crowd pointed to Noah, they say, has a rare decryption gift, though a newcomer, and has already managed to hit the guild. The archaeologist raised her eyebrows and clarified what the boy had rank and who he had a mini dragon on his shoulder. Noah smiled awkwardly. The rank E has just received, and Fafnir. His family's under the contract of his subordination. The girl sighed in disappointment. Such an adventurer, they say, is not suitable for her expedition. She added that the team needed no less than the village, but better and higher. Carl denied. Despite the young rank, Mr. Noah fulfilled the mission of level B, but the archaeologist only called it a random luck. The hum in the hall grew up until Serena has raised her hand, demanding silence. She reminded that the newcomer's rank does not reflect true talent, but Noah has just proven it with the case. The archaeologist immediately recognized Serena, the legendary rank of rank A, and fascinatedly ran to her. It turned out that in Lodolf fan clubs of a young star, and the girl was one of the fans. Noah was surprised how the name Serena sounded solidly, and the sword herself waved as if it were a trifle. When Guest invited Serena to lead the expedition and politely refused, pointing to Noah as a perfect run specialist, the archaeologist shone. Now it is clear why Serena supports the boy so much. She was pouring that Noah is pretty cute. Serena immediately cut off that there was no romance here. At the same time, she confirmed, Noah's talent is unique, and as an adventurer of rank A is rolling for his skill. She wondered if he restored Manu. Noah assured that he was already normal and ready for a new call. Then Serena offered the fastest proof, a friendly match. The archaeologist noted that the Iranga's fight against A-Rang sounds absurd. Adventurers gathered around, frozen. Serena persistently demanded to accept the call. She promised to restrain the force to the level of sparring, warning that the ancient magic Noah could be dangerous. With a smile, the sword rushed forward. "Try to go, decoder!" And the two sparks flew towards each other. Serena waved with a blade, and the blade rolled up, cutting the air with a sharp bell. In an instant the blow touched his shoulder, and the sword quickly assured that she had restrained strength, although the pain was palpable. Noah, nodding, shakes a groan. But when Serena was preparing to repeat the occasion, the guy suddenly disappeared and appeared on the side, like a shadow that slipped out of the beam. Noticing a lightning reaction, she smiled and confessed that he was envied by the ability to fly over the ground. Noah shouted that now his turn. The flames thickened in the pair of palm, going into the cloud of heat. Serena felt absolute fire. She already knew how dangerous these purple tongues were, and prepared to evade. The jet of hell escaped, but did not rush forward, but froze around the Noah wall of hot flicker. The swordsman was surprised. The flame suddenly became a barrier, locking the boy as if in the cocoon of fire. Her eyes expanded. The young man is about to use it as a smoke curtain and move behind. She rushed to turn, but empty air was left behind. The next second Noah was already behind her back. Serena smiled, acknowledging that Noah read her movement, taking advantage of the spatial step at a crucial moment. A crowd of adventurers exploded with surprised exclamations. Few hoped to see how E-Rang would outdraw A-Rang. The archaeologist who watched everything was not restraining. This battle confirmed the potential of the newcomer better than any words. Serena, slightly aware of the hall, acknowledged that the demonstration was delayed, and the benefit of it is obvious. The girl apologized to Noah for his preliminary disdain, and officially offered to join the expedition to the ruins. Serena has a fun winning, confirming the recommendation, and Noah accepted an invitation with a smile and gratitude. Soon Noah, Serena, Fafnir, and friends stood on the bridge, preparing for goodbye. Time flew relentlessly quickly. Serena said their short journey was like a fairy tale, full of sea and surprises. Noah acknowledged that he had learned more than he dreamed. The swordsman joked that the next meeting of Noah may well wear S-Rang, and the dragon promised to protect him on all paths. Finally, the guy said goodbye to his little Carl and her mother. In a good way, he helped to return to this family. Noah thanked everyone for his support, and felt for the first time he belonged to something important. Serena reached out for a farewell gesture. Friends on the bridge raised their palms in response, forming a cheerful chain of wishes. Returning, Serena whispered softly through his tears, "Happiness to you," realizing how much this moment we both weighs for them. When Noah moved the forest path next to a new acquaintance, she, awkward, called Yun, archaeologist and engineer of magical mechanisms from the capital of Lodolf. Noah, in response, represented himself and proudly showed Familian, Fafnir. Yun was interested in a reasonable dragon. Such creatures are incredible rarity. The guy just laughed, noticing her admiration. They soon reached the vehicle, a sophisticated magic motorman, which June was proud of above all. She confessed that this motorcycle was her pride and hobby. Noah was surprised because he never saw this. Dressing the helmet, the archaeologist asked if she was ready to leave. The young man nodded, feeling the anticipation of a great journey, although joked that he could shorten the way with a spatial step. The engine roared, and the motorcycle rushed forward, laying the road through the mountains, fields, and wilds, while they admired the scenery. During the stops near the fire, they discussed future riddles of the ruins, sharing dreams and plans. A few days later, the eastern ruins were faced with them. The moss-covered the walls silently kept the mysteries of the forgotten eras. The dark passage called inside. Noah immediately felt that these stones were hiding more than it seems. Without a minute, they settled in half-year-old, full of determination to solve the silent history of the ancients. Yun promised to become his mentor on archaeology, because there are mysterious mechanisms and traps ahead. She warned, treasures protect intricate traps. This made Noah as careful as possible. And indeed, when Yun came on a hidden plate, the corridor was filled with whistle of metal arrows. Noah raised the protective barrier instantly, and shells were bounced from the transparent sphere. The guy acknowledged that the warning was fair. Yun quickly recovered and explained that it was a test of his reaction. They moved on, but this time the ropes fell from the ceiling and entangled the girl, squeezing her body as if alive. The trap worked lightly, and Yun spanned, not knowing how to get out. Noah focused, preparing to act, because he realized the real trials of these ruins are just beginning. Without delaying a second, Noah ran up and one pulse torn the ropes, and then easily lifted Yun into his arms. Having examined the ropes that they have just jumped the girl, he became convinced that it is not a coincidence, but a long-time captive mechanism. Yun, still turning her breath, thanked the savior. She jokingly noted that she was now ready for any trap. Noah's nose is further corridor until they got the next hall. Yun stated that he would no longer let go of his step, and Fafnir took to go in front, clearing the way. Finally, they entered the room where the next key to the mystery of the ruins should hide. Yun asked what to do next, and Noah, looking at the dark corners, assured there were no hidden traps. It reassured the girl a little, but she continued to watch her closely. Noah's gaze stopped on the wall, all covered with strange symbols. Yun was enthusiastically asked if he could read them. The young man nodded and plunged into decryption. The records told how the father was worried about her daughter, who did not behave by age. Yun was surprised what it had to do with the ruins, but Noah explained. Before them, the page of the ancient diary. The text mentioned the 20th year of the runic calendar, the time of water, the day when his father taught daughter of magic. Noah added, now the 779th year of the same calculus, so more than 7 centuries have passed. This argued that the ruins belonged to a long, disappeared civilization. Further, his father complained that he should fight the Turtle of Dreams, a mysterious creature. Noah wondered what it could mean. Continuing the search, they got a dead end. Fafnir reported that all other moves have already been surveyed. Yun sighed. Despite the path traveled, there is still no valuable findings. Sleeping from his back, she joked that it was a good science from senior archaeologists. Sometimes the ruins are stingy for discovery, so it is worth at least to read the inscriptions. It was then that Noah noticed a barely noticeable sign on the wall, an instruction to find a book. Yun was confused with which the volume was talking about. She got her own notepad with schemes and personal notes, but no reaction happened. Noah wondered. A book that was opening the secrets had to appear here. After focusing, he felt that it was necessary to try again. If the artifact manifested somewhere, then only in this place. When he opened his eyes, the emptiness disappeared. The revealed folio lay before the young man, and his breath escaped himself. He was finally found. On the pages of the foliant, notes were full. Noah eagerly absorbed them and learned about the maze, the list of traps, their accurate dislocation and ways of neutralization, and also a mini-card with safe corridors. On one of the schemes, he noticed a ladder hiding behind a solid wall. The guy quickly put the book to reality, focusing on what he saw. Changing the spatial project, Noah literally erased a stone obstacle and drew a door that led a new way. When he opened his eyes, the wall disappeared, and a new passage ahead of the black passage. The sight even impressed him. Yun was stuck, and only could whisper that it was impossible. Noah shrugged and advised to move on without wasting his time to explain. The girl, recovering, ran after. The corridor ended with a hall where the soft lights suddenly flashed. The torches on the walls flared themselves, illuminating every step. Yun, touching metal plates, was surprised by the ancient magic of light fire and the incredible quality of the alloy from which the walls were erected. She exclaimed that this material is stronger than any modern, and even surprisingly technological, a real archaeological sensation. Noah also did not hide the delight, because the deeper they moved, the larger the opening became. Suddenly, they both stepped into the hall, where the crystal mountain shone under the ceiling, and a girl was hanging in the air. The soft glow of the crystals enveloped her figure, turning the scene into a fairy tale illusion. Yun guessed that they were not a doll, but some strange technological capsule, and yet hesitant to say a guess. Noah, feeling a powerful magical impulse, confirmed, "Energy is alive. It is not a dummy, but a real person is in a state of forced stagnation." He suggested that the mechanism may have been able to stop time, which is why the girl looked frozen. In a few seconds, the inscription, "Access is allowed," broke out, and the system exhaled the couple, as if awakening. Yun looked around, not understanding why the device was activated right now. From the ventilation nozzles, the steam jet gave them cool. When the fog was scattered, the sleeping girl began to fall uncontrollably down. Noah reacted instantly, rushed forward, and picked it up before she would hit the floor. Keeping a stranger in his hands, the young man felt a light heartbeat and warm breath. The mystery of the ruins just opened a new page. Noah felt a stranger slowly came to her senses, as if collecting scattered consciousness. Following the smallest movement, he asked alarmed if she was not bad, and in response he heard a barely expressive, surprisingly murmur. The girl narrowed her gaze and said the defective tone that she understands his language, and therefore he was a lying demon. She did not have time to justify as she slipped, spilled over in the air and landed, while June with Fafnir froze from tension. Starting in a battle stable, the stranger emitted a fierce determination and willingness to attack again. Noah carefully analyzed each of her movements, more and more convincing. Before him, a creature is not just alive, but ancient and mysterious. Suddenly the girl sang. The tune penetrated into the mind, affecting the most secret strings of the soul. Fafnir roared, preparing for a counterattack, and Noah felt the explosion of a force that was nurturing inside. A moment, and a double flame broke out between the opponents. The two elements were confronted by clearing the air. The clash flared up with frantic fierce, throwing fiery waves on both sides. Yun could not believe that someone still possessed absolute flames, so destructive and clean. The heat grew. The girl was pouring with fiery volley. Noah answered until the excessive impulse knocked her down. Then he remembered her words of language and realized she uses an ancient speech and her fire, the legacy of the missing era. He was a representative of the ancient race, still a living memory of the times when magic was everyday life. Noah traveled to her, assuring that he was not an enemy and wants to get clear. But the stranger suddenly jumped, wrapped it with his feet, and closed a painful delight, like a living trap. The young man tightened all the muscles, trying to escape, but her strength was enormous. Fafnir instantly increased to the real size and rejected the girl aside. She easily jumped on her feet, as if she had not touched the blow, and the dust sparkled around her as if an illusion. Having moved the spirit, Noah thanked the dragon. Without his intervention, everything could end much more dangerous. Yun, watching everything, was stunned. A battle was unfolded in front of her, which was difficult to imagine. Noah again turned to a stranger, loudly convincing that they did not pose a threat to her. The girl shuddered, hearing the ancient language of the runes. Her sound was cold on the skin, because in the present it seemed unthinkable. She asked if he belonged to the Run tribe. Noah honestly replied, no, that only ignited her curiosity. Looking at Jun, he asked a little time to explain. The girl nodded silently, and Noah carefully approached the stranger. He told that she was sealed in a capsule that stopped time, and his gift of the decoder allowed her to wake her up. With tears in her eyes, she remembered the war of people with devils, and how her father hid it to preserve the last spark of their culture and magic. Noah realized, in front of him is a living legend of the era, which has now remained. She asked how many years have passed. Noah replied, so much that her language has become almost forgotten ancient times, and it has fallen in her face. The girl fell silent, feeling the vast loneliness in the world that has changed for a long time. Searching for supports, she asked Noah to show her heavenly guard, the ancient tower nearby. She explained that the building is built by runes that can survive whole era, and it must see this world with her own eyes. Noah appealed to Yun to help. Remembering the tower on the road here, the archaeology agreed. Using the spatial transition, they were instantly at the top, and the girl, which Noah now called Alexia, was amazed at this skill. Standing on the edge, Alexia looked at the endless ruins of Kirkshire, which stretched in the distance. In her thoughts, she returned to the past when these lands were devastated by wars and confessions of old conflicts. Once upon a time, there were the stones themselves, and even now in her heart, The void of the lost motherland was gaping in her heart. Having realized the truth of Noah, she apologized for his distrust and thanked for the awakening. At the request of Noah Alexia, she quietly told how Kirkshire once was. A rich, harmonious kingdom, where people lived modestly but majestically, cherishing alliance with nature. She pointed down on the giant stone palm and explained that once the masters of her people created a real, man-made hand, a giant golem forged with ancient runes. The same runny magicians of Kirkshire were so powerful that they were able to reflect even the most horrific demons that broke through from other dimensions. Alexia quit the question of how many people live in the world now. Noah thought a little and replied that he did not know the exact number, but there are many. He added that it was because of the sacrifice of the runners that humanity could survive the dark epochs and rise now. The words subsided, and the invisible tears rolled on the girl's cheeks, because between her yesterday and today, whole eras. Noah realized what a shock was to wake up and realize that your homeland no longer existed and you remained alone. With a warm smile he assured, as one of those who possess the runes, he will stand nearby and protect it from any dangers. Yun, who watched it all, moved tears and whispered that the ancient people were incredibly gentle and noble. Noah was surprised by such an discovery, asked where she understands everything. Yun confessed that Fafnir asked in advance to translate their conversation. She asked the meeting to keep a meeting. She would have reported to the king behind the protocol. But now she cares above all about the physical and mental state of the princess. Noah introduced the girls. He called June Archaeologine with pure intentions, so that Alexia would not be afraid. Yun once again introduced herself, and Noah added her own name and mention of Fafnir. Then politely asked the name of the stranger. She replied, Alexia. And Noah noted that this name sounds like an ancient tune. The girl opened. She is a Princess Kirkshire, I am glad. Noah was somewhat embarrassed by the title, but Alexei, with a sad smile, noted that formal titles lost meaning in the New World. Yun, interested, asked to translate and immediately supported the princess, finding a sincere capture of her story. Alexia confessed. Despite the century, the sense of duty and royal privileges still live in her heart. Noah smiled cheerfully. She said with a decisive tone that she fully trusts her feet. And Noah had joked what he knew from the experience of how far you can walk. The girl glanced at him on the side, and he hurriedly clarified that he was just joking. Then he told Yun that they decided to travel on foot. Yun did not expect such a choice and raised his eyebrows in surprise. In response, Alexia closed her eyes, and a memory of her father appeared in front of her. She saw her back, saying goodbye to her dearest daughter, before a long separation. At that moment, the images of parents, all her people, fell in memory, and the heart was gratitude for everything they had left her. None of the younger ones looked around when she slowed down. Alexia nodded silently and hurried to catch up with the detachment. Meanwhile, in a completely different place, a mysterious creature, full of annoyance, complained about the delay made by Noah. She believed that it was not necessary to hurry. Waiting quietly, the creature was certain. It almost reached a dreamy dream. Noah and Alexia reached Lodolf, the majestic capital of the kingdom, where architecture united ancient traditions with the latest styles. Looking around with surprise, Noah could not but admire the scope and majesty of the royal capital. But Boltia, with a touch of sadness in her voice, said that even Lodolf could not match the beauty of Kirkshire. At the massive city gates, they opened the fussy world. The streets raged with people. Everyone was in a hurry in their business, creating a solid flow of movement. Alexia, not accustomed to such a glamour, felt like her hands trembling lightly, and in a hurry lowered her eyes, trying to hide the excitement. She confessed that crowds, benches, and noise caused her confusion and anxiety. All this seemed too new. The embarrassed condition did not go unnoticed. Noah wondered if Kirkshish was calmer. Alexia nodded, apologized, and searched for supports, carefully took him by her hand. But suddenly someone called them. Alexia noted that she felt calmer in the cloak, perhaps through the runes engraved on the fabric. They probably had protective properties. Soon they found themselves in front of a gorgeous estate, a majestic building with a massive door. As soon as he stepped inside, June reported her return loudly. She immediately approached the maid and filed a cloak, but she asked how she was tested this time. Yun briefly replied that everything had passed quite satisfactorily. She then pointed to Noah and Alexia, presenting them as guests that will remain here for a short time. At the same time, she asked to be especially careful for Alexia, because she is a stranger. The maid nodded with respect, approached Noah and Alexia, and suggested to remove the outerwear. Noah gently asked Alexia to remove the cape, after which they handed over things. Feeling a slight dizziness after a long journey and emotions, Alexia confessed that she was very hungry. Yoon smiled and said she understood her without translation. Time to dine. One of the maids put forward a chair for Noah, inviting to sit down. He shot a little. She then asked if he had special wishes for dishes. Young Thomas pointed to one of the notes, noting that it was a brand dish of a cook. Everyone wished each other delicious and started a meal. No one noticed that Alexia was in no hurry to start a meal. She was mildly reminded that he could already start eating. She took the fork, and, when he was determined, decided to try the dish. With some uncertainty, he inserted a fork in a piece of meat. Noah and June watched her with interest. The young smiled. There was something naive in the manners of Alexia, even the primitive, but at the same time charming. But suddenly Alexia stopped, realizing that she was behaving a little inappropriate. Carefully put a fork on the table, she apologized for her manners. Noah smiled warmly, assuring that there was no reason to excite, especially after such a delay in food. Alexia sighed with a slight sadness. Her father often quarreled her for his own behavior. However, understanding the harshness of royal etiquette, she agreed to learn more sophisticated manners. Noah immediately took up the business, explained how to keep the knife and fork, showing everything on the example. While Alexia chewed, he praised her, noting that she was doing well. She agreed. The taste of the dish was revealed quite differently. Noah smiled, asked the maid to hand him bread and, taking him in his hands, ritually cut in half. Then he showed how to put meat and vegetables in soy sauce. After completing the combination, he collected a simple but appetizing sandwich. Interesting. Though a little uncertain, Alexia tried to do the same. Yoon smiled and said she looked delicious, and she would also make herself like her childhood. She gently took Alexia by her hand, supporting her, and led to a bathroom with a gentle smile, wishing good luck with a kind look. Yoon enthusiastically wanted to explain Alexia what to do, but barely understood what was happening around. Meanwhile, Jun pointed to numerous bottles, evenly put on shelves. Alexia was confused and did not know whether she would apply something of it. She remembered that there was a simple magical cleaning in Kirkshish. Meanwhile, June began to soap her hair. Alexia watched in surprise as Yoon was covered with foam and thought why those bubbles were so clearly pulled on the side. Then Yoon again pointed to one of the bottles and squeezed a little remedy on her body. Watching Alexia, June noted how well the skin was well groomed and pure in her. Everything in her appearance was a noble origin. Alexia said something, but June did not understand anything. Without Noah, which was usually a translator between them, the meaning of words remained a mystery. Yoon even thought that Alexia had called her arrogant and said that she was a princess of ancient kind. But the young man immediately realized Alexia hardly said something offensive. Maybe her face seemed cold, but most likely it is just a natural feature. She decided to reject these thoughts, because it is only a common bath. It is not a reason to worry. Subsequently, they came out of the bath, wrapped in soft towels, and stopped in front of a large mirror. Yoon showed Alexia Feng and called it a magical device for drying hair. Alexia looked fascinated at him, accepting the artifact. Then, taking advantage of magic, she created warm flows of air that gently wrapped her head. Yoon suddenly asked Noah if she could learn the ancient language on her own. Noah assured her, with her mind and diligence, certainly. He added that even ancient and modern can coexist if sincerity prevails between people. Alexia and Yoon looked at the exchanging with light smiles, silent consent. And Noah stood with an ancient book in his hands. The pages were covered with symbols, as if squeezed out the most time. He showed her father, emphasizing that he could decipher it thanks to his innate talent. At the same moment, Noah woke up. The heart was beating unevenly, the forehead was moist, and the soft bed barely kept his body. Alexia slept deeply. Alexia looked at the contents of her plate and after a short pause decided to eat bread first, and then a white apple. She carefully took a piece of bread, lifted her mouth, and bite. Noah was surprised. Her modern language has become much more confident. He said it gently with a smile. Alexia also smiled and explained. Everything is simple. He was a good person. Noah carefully asked if everything was fine with her. Alexia quietly asked him to stroke her head. He reached out and touched her silky hair. At that moment, his father's image appeared in his heart. Alexia noticed a change in his gaze and was worried about whether everything was fine. Noah assured her that all was well and asked not to worry. To get distracted, he spoke out aloud. They would be good to go to the guild and register Alexia. Alexia leaned closer and asked who the adventurers were. Noah explained that these are universal workers. Collect herbs, fight monsters. She nodded, showing that she understood. He added that such a life will allow her to get to know the modern world better and learn to earn on her own. Alexia, without hesitation, said that he was ready. The main thing is that he was nearby. Then Noah turned to Yun, asking her plans for tomorrow. And Yun was sitting on the floor, fully focused on a strange device that dimly glowed with magical symbols. The Fafnir, who watched her, noted the incredible concentration of Young. Alexia, looking intently, asked what she was doing. Noah explained that June creates a new magic device and tries to direct the energy of runes to power the mechanism. This was very impressed by Alexia. Seeing that Jun was fully immersed in work, Noah decided to go to the guild only with Alexia. Saying goodbye, they left the house, leaving Yoon in her technical world. Alexia, a little confused, registered in the guild and received her first rank D. Although the procedure was surprisingly simple, it seemed to her that she behaved awkwardly and spoke not too confidently. Fafnir, who carefully observed, explained, for Noah, with his abilities, rank D, only the beginning. He could easily get S, and Noah recalled that the increase was going on gradually, everything in a timely manner. Alexia, looking at the crowd, confessed that she was tired of noise. Noah agreed and offered to return. On the way, Alexei suddenly, after a short pause, asked what gender really Fafnir. Noah laughed. Such a question was a complete surprise for him. It was at this point that someone's unknown presence appeared behind that it went unnoticed. Alexia, frozen, did not believe her eyes. There was no other than the father of Noah. Gildigan looked at his son quietly and said that all the explanations would wait. Now Noah has to return home immediately. Noah, confused, denied. He was expelled. But his father silently grabbed his hand with such a power that it was impossible to escape. He strictly ordered to silence and go. Noah escaped, shouting that he would not return. He has another life, new responsibilities. But Gildigand released only his son's head, not a hand. The next moment in the air a fire broke out. The heat around increased. The father stated that he would return Noah if he did not go himself. Noah hoped that his father would stop, but it became even worse. The bullet explosions of the flames began to fall around, as if from a dark failure. This rain of fire was a corporate attack by Gildigand Aldeheim, the most powerful fiery magician of their kind. In his hands there was magic capable of both destroying and saving. Noah stared at many fiery balls, but suddenly felt a new power. He instinctively raised his hand, and a bright stream of flames escaped from his body. But the magic that was just beginning to wake up in it was ancient, purple, foggy, ominous, and majestic. Hildegand stopped, could not believe his eyes. He was in front of him with a fire that belonged to ancient magic. This was confirmed by the words of Princess Claudia. He asked if Noah really found the ancient Greek force. Now he realized that the son he underestimated managed to reveal the potential by deciphering ancient texts and mastering true magic. The battle between them was gaining momentum. In anger, Gildigand exclaimed that Noah had finally earned his family head. But he, without changing his expression, replied coldly, he refuses everything he offers him. And then Noah realized, his father never saw a man in him, only a tool for ambitions, not a person with their own will. Hildegand exploded again with a cry. In this family the highest value was not the choice, but a talent. They are a him. They are obliged to be strong and not to transfer power to others. For him, talent is not a gift, but a fate. Alexia, without frightening his gaze, confidently warned, if the attack continues, someone would definitely be injured. She urged Noah not to restrain, even if he is native blood against him. Noah, feeling the power he sought all his life, stood before Alexia. Having assigned a danger, he protected it even at the cost of his own blood. Suddenly the earth under the feet shuddered, and the air trembled. It seemed that the magic itself was rushing to freedom, falling out of control. Cracks appeared in the soil, the walls of the buildings were protected, and the first strong push forced people to look out of their homes. Everyone was afraid without understanding what was happening. The father warned, he will not be able to run, so you should not try. After these words, he sharply turned and left, not even giving Noah to insert. His steps subsided, and the figure disappeared into the air, leaving only a barely tangible trace of magic. Noah, looking silently in that direction, returned to Alexia, thanking her and apologizing for her behavior. She answered nothing. A thoughtful look testified that she was still trying to understand everything she had just happened. It was something too powerful. Every moment she suggested an alarming anticipation of the catastrophe. Noah could not find peace. Suddenly, an unspeakable monster appeared from the east. The giant size was slowly approaching the city. The ancient records found in the ruins provided for its appearance. He was called the Sleep of a Turtle, a creature from dreams and ancient prophecies. These words Jan Rita spoke in front of the throne of the king, forced everyone in the hall to solidify in fear. Princess Claudia screamed of horror, but her voice drowned the determination of the king. He immediately ordered to mobilize all the forces of the kingdom to prevent destruction. Over the moment, orders to gather knights, magicians, and send adventurers of all ranking. Starting from the first, Yun, breaking away from royal papers, turned to Noah and Alexia, explaining, "The full force of the kingdom is involved, and even it is difficult for her to believe that all this is happening so rapidly." Yana stated with relief. Fortunately, Noah and Alexia immediately felt the presence of a turtle sleep. The creature moved at incredible speed. It will reach the capital in 3 days, so the operation should be started in 2 days on the eastern border. Yun added that she would remain in the castle. "We'll make a strategy based on information from Alexia. And Noah with Alexia can relax in the estate and prepare." Alexia asked Yun to rest with concern, not to exhaust herself too early. But only she waved for goodbye and moved in business. Smiling, Noah and Alexia remained too. The threat hanged in the air. As the door closed, Alexia felt the silence that enveloped the city. Only warriors and adventurers remained in the capital, all who had to fight the tortoise. The atmosphere seemed disturbing. Silence before the storm. Noah suggested resting to keep the forces for a decisive battle. Alexia agreed with him. They wished each other good night, but both plunged into their own anxious thoughts. However, Alexia soon stopped. The alarm did not release. She looked at Noah with sadness in her eyes and, when she dared, offered to go to bed together to at least quench her fear. Noticing her gaze, Noah was unable to refuse. They settled in one bed, and soon Alexia was breathing quietly in her sleep. But Noah could not sleep. Too many thoughts did not give him rest. Subsequently, he felt a strange pressure on his clothes, as if someone had grabbed a sleeve. It was Alexia. She firmly held him by his sleeve, as if apologizing and looking for protection. Then he began to tell her the truth. About his origin, about the family of Aldheim, a famous family of magicians, who renounced him because of the alleged futility and lack of talent. Alexia listened in silence. She leaned closer, frightened by the future battle. In her words, anxiety sounded. Because the sleepy turtle was not a common monster, even in Kirkshish was not equal. But Noah firmly promised that he would not allow himself to die. He will do everything to win. Alexia nodded, feeling his confidence, and soon fell asleep again, stuck to him. Wishing her good night, Noah looked around and noticed. On the one hand, Alexei pressed, on the other, Fafnir. It was cozy, but the atmosphere remained tense. The next morning, Fafnir sat by the bed and shouted loudly for Noah and Alexia to wake up. Noah jumped, not fully awakened, and immediately asked if something was changed in the movement of a sleepy turtle. But Fafnir confidently replied that everything was unchanged. Then he added that for a long time in the south. Noah, shocked, jumped on his feet. Fast gathering, he realized that they needed to be in the garrison, otherwise they would be late. He shouted Alexia so that she was also changing clothes. Alexia, yawning, rose and began to undress, but Noah grabbed Fafnir and ran out of the room. When they arrived in the garrison, Noah asked as Alexia could sleep so much before the decisive battle. But with a smile she replied that Noah himself snored like a real boar. Fafnir, smiling, said that the main thing, they were not late. Many magicians, archers and fighters in heavy armor gathered around. No one paid attention to the newcomers. They did not realize that among them were the adventurers of the rank of S, the elite of the kingdom of Rusty. These were only 12. And here, Fafnir turned to Noah with an important remark. He explained that fighting in the usual form of a little dragon is uncomfortable, but it is impossible to turn into a real form among people. Noah nodded. The excitement of Fafnir was justified. Soon Fafnir disappeared into the nearest tent. Noah and Alexia were left out without knowing what to expect. When Fafnir returned, a sweet girl with horns stood in front of them. Obviously not human appearance, but surprisingly charming. He explained that in the human likeness, it will be easier to merge with the crowd. Noah, stunned, asked why this form. Fafnir calmly replied that he had no idea of gender, just chose a cute look not to arouse suspicion. At this point, the girl approached them. She reported that all adventurers have already been distributed emergency strategic instructions. Noah took the sheet and started reading. Alexia, noticing his focus, wondered what was written there. Fafnir looked at the text, but confessed that he did not understand anything. Noah read and said that the troops were divided into 3 main detachments. The first group consisted of rusty army knights and a magical unit. It was they who were to stand on the forefront, entering into a direct battle with a tortoise sleep. The third group consisted of court magicians and adventurers of the rank S. Their task was to defense the cities. The worried Alexia wondered why you couldn't just go on the offensive. Noah explained that the command is better to trust the army. They are experienced and disciplined. Among the commanders of the third group was his father. It reassured Noah a little, because their detachments were separated, and there were few chances to meet in battle. Noah continued, "On the path of sleep turtles are magical mechanisms that should delay the monster, but even they did not guarantee anything. The mechanisms will only slow down the advancement of the creature. It will be almost impossible to stop it completely." Alexia, looking at magical constructions, could not believe that she would have to fight such a nightmare. Seeing her mindfulness, Noah proposed to bring her things to the tent. This evening they would spend the night in the open sky because a decisive battle is ahead. Alexia nodded silently, and despite fatigue, followed him. Meanwhile, Princess Claudia approached Hildendand. Thanks to participating in the preparation for the mission and apologizing for a difficult day, Hildendand said restrained that everything was fine. He understood that despite her young age, Claudius have to perform his duties not only of the princess, but in fact, the king himself. She confessed that she was very afraid of her father and did not want something to happen to him. Hildendand fell silent, delving into his own thoughts. He thought that Noah's involvement in an emergency mission did not leave Claudia indifferent. She may already see more in it than just a magician. The next day, Noah, Fafnir, and Alexia stood near the tent, completely ready for battle. The warriors took their positions first, preparing to meet the inevitable threat. The shields were raised. The knights of the Rastian army were lined up in combat line, complete combat readiness. An emergency surgery called Battle with Sleep Turtles has begun. When the first shells flew to the side of the monster and hit his huge body, a real battle for survival began. Meanwhile, in temporary shelter on the outskirts of the capital, children were hiding under the supervision of women. The atmosphere was filled with anxiety. The little girl approached her mother and quietly asked if it was true that a terrible monster wanted to destroy their home. The mother, smiling, tried to reassure her, promising that the soldiers of Rastia, the strongest in the whole kingdom, would be able to cope. She kissed her daughter in her forehead and whispered that everything would be fine. The girl only nodded silently, but the anxiety did not disappear from her eyes. And on the battlefield, rage collisions have already fallen out. The warriors opened a full volley towards the sleep of the turtle without delaying a second. The shells were absorbed into the massive body of the creature, but they almost did not harm. Its shell was too strong. One of the soldiers in despair exclaimed that the shelling was in vain. The monster was not slowed. The commander, squeezing his fists, ordered to fight further, though he trembled. The protective spells were cracking, and the turtle sharply spread the enormous mouth, as if it were ready to swallow the horizon itself. The emptiness of that mouth covered all by icy horror. The fear of the silence was stuck directly in the soul of the warriors. Realizing the hopelessness, the commander ordered to retreat to the reserve line of defense. But the turtle did not stop. She broke the walls and shafts, leaving the hope of restraining her progress. When the monster approached the second line, the police girl faded, shouting adventurers to prepare for the fight in the near distance. Noah, Alexia, and Fafnir retreated a little back, watching the soldiers holding back a creature, twice as high as any of his famous monster. The turtle, not noticing the blows, persistently moved forward, and once powerful fortifications began to crack. The stalks of the shells were melting, the magic barrier swept, holding back the hut of the monster. The commander, seeing the disaster, with pain whispered that it can be the end. The soldier nearby heard him in the rose ruddy, but having clasped his teeth, the head ordered the last desperate attack, hoping to win at least a moment of time. The warriors, thinking only of homes and relatives, rushed forward without sparing their lives. Their blades and spells were raining, but the turtle with a cold fury continued the offensive, thrusting everything around. Alexia, unable to withstand the spectacle, thanked the daredevils for their sacrifice. Gathering freedom, she flew into the sky and released a wave of magic, wrapping the soldiers with a shining barrier. A dense field stopped a deadly stroke. The turtle grung and crashed, and the protective sphere was kept. Fafnir starred, thundering that the warriors retreat, and raised his weapon, strengthening the magic barrier. The tandem of dragon force and the ancient runes of Alexia for a moment stopped the monster on the monster, giving the defenders a sip of air. Noah, seeing a breakthrough, prepared his own spell. In his eyes, a purple fire of ancient magic broke out. The next moment promised a decisive blow. The united courage of the warriors and the strength of the Trinity were preparing to break the course of the battle. Noah warned everyone. The turtle shortened the distance too quickly. There are a few moments. Without hiding, Alexia thundered at adventurers, ordered to retreat immediately to the backup line. The soldiers froze in horror and suddenly realized they really need to run, otherwise they will die on the spot. Noah, keeping away, did not look from the monster, rage and pain in the heart. The destroyed Kirkshish and the death of the innocent, among them, close Alexia, floated before her eyes. The awareness came. It was the sleepy turtle that took the life of her father and hundreds of people. Noah raised his hand. A whirlwind broke out around, as if nature itself responded to his anger. The storm winds were growing stronger, nourishing the element that was born from his soul. The tornadoes went forward, aimed at the turtle. Alexia and Fafnir were observed with mixed surprise and fear. Stripping through the storm, Noah exclaimed that this creature made Alexi lonely and defenseless. In his hands formed a storm blade, a skillful skill that turns the wind into deadly steel. He collapsed on the shell of a creature, hoping at least to damage it a little. Tornado roared, wrapping the monster, and Noah watched as a hurricane increased every second. When the vortex subsided, there was an alarming silence. The turtle stood intact, as if nothing had happened. The shell was still shining without a crack. Fafnir was stuck, and Alexia noticed. The beast was completely hidden inside, surviving the attack. Without fear and pain, the turtle put a giant head out, preparing for a counter-struggle. Magical shells flew out of the shell. Like cannon nuclei, they sowed air with a whistle. The charges crashed into the Alexia barrier with a roar, and the defense stood. Noah realized that the shell not only absorbs magic, but also reflects it with terrible power. He glanced at Alexia and acknowledged with gloomy sobriety. Their fiery and windy campfire manages to withstand, but not to break the turtle itself. Remembering the Peep Book, the ancient source of magic, Noah realized, to victory it is necessary to change the rules of battle. Otherwise this creature is invincible. Noah quickly looked around, met Alexia and Fafnir's views, and realized, without their distracting maneuver, his risky protection plan will not work. However, having realized the idea, it will lose its strength for a minute. The body will not withstand such a load, and no one has guessed this weakness. The poor determination broke out in the eyes of his comrades, and they assured in one voice that they could rely on them. Noah thanked, but it was at this moment that everything went to a scraper. A powerful wave of magic pierced him from his back. Without pulling where the blow came from, he felt the body shuddered, and his ears flooded from the explosion that rushed it forward. Fafnir turned, stunned. The attack on the rear was so unexpected that they did not even have time to react. The magical explosion threw Noah. But, squeezing his teeth, he kept consciousness, and shouted to his friends that everything was fine with him. Having collected freedom, he called on Alexia and Fafnir to concentrate the punches of the turtle, so that he would not gain a decisive advantage. Feeling an invisible threat, Noah turned sharply. The hazard was throbbing in the air. Before him was a dark figure, Hildendand Aldaheim, a father whose view of flashing anger and disgust. In the hands of Hildendand, the flashing of a merciless fire, and the cold voice threatened with threats, as if he had already decided the fate of his son. A moment later, the father noticed on the back of Noah's ancient protective cloak, an artifact of the past era, a foreign modern magic. Hildegonda's face was even more rose. Without going, he twisted the flames into the fiery whip and threw it on Noah. The burning fallow deer flew, but Noah splashed an elastic wave of water, evaporating the flames before it touched the skin. He pleaded with his father to stop. Now is not the time for quarrels when the capital stands in the face of the catastrophe, and Hildendand was relentless. With a disgusting smile, he greeted that he is indifferent to the city and the turtle. The main thing is to pick up a son, what the price would be. Noah replied with absolute flames, but his father erected the icy wall of the fourth circle, instantly blocking the attack. Realizing that Hildendand easily neutralizes even the combined elements, Noah realized he would have to look for another way. He gathered the remnants of strength and released a concentrated magical volley, hoping to break through his father's defense for a moment. The blow stuck through the icy barricade. Sparks flew all the way. The decisive duel of his father and son exploded with a new fury. The father, engulfed in the rage, ordered the flame to explode. He activated the spell of the 6th level, and the air was boiling around. The space overheated, the magic shimmed with waves, and from the hands of Hildeganda escaped Meteor of the Bench. A burning ball rushed to Noah. Their views agreed. Despite the devastating force of the spell, Noah retained the creepy calm without taking his eyes. A huge crater was put into the ground with a roar. And from the smoke, Noah's smoke remained unbreakable. From the clubs of the ashes came out laughing himself Gildedand. He was consumed that the worthless talent was equal to the most prominent magician. Smiling, he called the misfortune that this power would not belong to the genus Aldeheim. But even more disaster if the secret of the expulsion of Noah is revealed. In his voice, a hidden threat swell. For the sake of preserving the title, he will go to everything, even to the death of his own son. Breaking the mantle, Gildedand has declared the final battle. Either Noah will sink or disappear forever. But Noah replied quietly that he was not going to return and would not allow himself to kill. He also dropped the cloak. His eyes flashed with determination. He promised Alexia to destroy the sleepy turtle and did not turn off his chosen path. Although he did not want to fight his father, it was now late. This fight became inevitable. Noah looked straight into the eyes of Hildeganda. Courage and unwavering were embarrassed to the depth. "Buddy arrogance," the father said, not believing that the son dreamed of resisting him. But Noah was only reinforced. Being late to be a father now. The next moment he disappeared from view. Instant teleportation left Hildegand stunned. Realizing that the son uses spatial magic, he howled the rage. "I will not allow you to escape." "I don't run away." He came behind his back. Hildegand tried to turn around, but it was too late. Noah was already standing. Gathering all power, he lifted his fist charged with ancient energy, and, as a thunder, he lowered the destructive blow directly into his father's chest, deciding the fate of their cruel duel. Hildegand, getting a blow directly into the chest, fell to the ground deafly, coughing hoarsely. Noah stood above him, and his father, distorted by pain, was still trying to fade. The son strictly asked how much he would cling to the past. If he does not stop now, all the fault would fall only on him. Rising to your knees and trembling, Gildedand crooked, "Do you really kill your father?" But in the eyes of Noah, unwavering determination was read. The thin strip of light was in his palm, and a black void was opened in front of Hildegand, absorbing the remnants of magic. The body of the father has devoured, remaining in an inanimate burden on a cracked earth. Noah stood silently over him, not showing any emotions, and then, barely tilting his head, moved away. Under his nose, he whispered the fabulous, "Once everything will be fine," but in his voice he was swollen by a slight irony. Meanwhile, Alexia was still holding back a sleepy turtle. Her barrier flicked from tension. Fafnir circled above, erupting the flame rays directly into the muzzle of a giant monster. Noticing the girlfriend's fatigue, the dragon suggested that she rest, but Alexia assured that she was holding on and would not retreat. When the tension reached the boundaries, the figure approached them. Both looked around. It was Noah. He was quiet for being late, as if it had importance in the middle of the battle. Quickly inspecting the field, he suggested that you unite the strength and finally finish the monster. Alexia, shuddering, cast her gaze on Noah and asked her father timidly. A heavy silence hung for a moment. Barely smiling, Noah whispered, "I have no father anymore." These words sounded like a sentence. Tears broke in the eyes of the girl. Fafnir, not looking away from the turtle, warned, "The monster is preparing for the attack again." Without a second, Noah raised his hands. The barrier formed a solid wall and held a devastating turtle haul. But it is not enough to defend. Looking at his friends, he asked them to distract the monster. He needed time to find a way to break the shell. The answer was instant. Alexia and Fafnir nodded, straining their shoulders, ready to take the entire offensive, as a corrosive smoke was raised from the turtle's mouth again, and the metal glitter of her eyes heralded a new flurry of horror. Noah rapidly rushed to a giant shell, shouting his comrades who expects them. In a confident voice, a barely hidden anxious shade was felt. He realized, only closer can change the situation, so he should just stand on a shell, even at the cost of his own life. Alexia, horrifying the desperate maneuver, shouted that it was madness, and when she saw his determination, she firmly stated that she would fly after. The sparks of zeal broke out in her eyes. Rising into the sky, she rushed to Noah, and Fafnir realized, now he needs to attach the attention of the monster. Despite the danger, the dragon did not retreat. He clenched his teeth and thought that the monsters were always comfortable tools in the hands of the villains. Smiling ominously, Fafnir thundered on the turtle, distracting it, until Noah landed on the shell and felt the ripple of another's magic under his feet. Alexia hung behind, like an invisible support. Noah said he should do it himself, but she shook her head. He fell silent, closed his eyes and began to concentrate the power, absorbing the energy around, while the girl's thoughts were spinning the terrible truth about her father's death. Alexia could not believe that Noah really killed his father. In the meantime, he flipped through the peace book, looking for a way to change the rules of battle. Realizing that their victory depends on this book, Noah focusedly focused, and the whole world of speech directed forces to one goal: victory. At the headquarters, Jun was watching the map hard. The officer reported that the second defense line was cracking. The situation is critical. However, the emergence of incredible strength adventurers sharply slowed the turtle promotion, giving a desperate break. Yun realized that it was a detachment of Noah. She immediately ordered the troops to support adventurers and threw the order further. She confidently collected all the reserves, placed S-rags in key positions and reminded to use magical weapons. Every step decided the fate of the capital. Meanwhile, Noah, as if hanging in the void, flipped through the pages. The fingers touched the ancient symbols, and he began to translate them. The page on the page revealed unknown signs. No manuscript had previously contained such code. He guessed that it is a shift of perfect protection, more complicated than in the case of Sentinel B, and the principle remained the same. His gift of decryption worked, almost instinctively rose, smiling. The task was lighter than it thought. In a few seconds, the code was subjected to. The page shone, opening hidden information about the weakness of the shell. Upon learning of the turtle shell, he immediately conveyed the knowledge of Alexia and Fafnir to turn them into a decisive blow. As soon as Noah has completed the changes, no reaction. He had already thought that he made mistakes when suddenly the book sharply slammed the cover. In the air, dozens of volumes were born, which was staggered around. Their mass was covered with a horizon. Noah realized he will have to overwrite not one folio but all this library of knowledge, and no fear in the heart. Grabbing the closest volume, he continued to work confidently, as if he had returned to children's hours in the library. Then he absorbed the ancient wisdom of the page by page. Now, at the hardest moment, did the same with double focus. The next code is solved. The runes were melting under his gaze, but Noah almost felt a loss of time or exhaustion. The book by the book opened the secrets, and he did not even notice how much effort he had already spent. Decryption became a routine. With every turned page, he felt the whole goal, a key that would break the monster's armor. Fafnir, meanwhile, was spreading in front of the shell. His gaze did not break away from the turtle that stuck his paw forward, trying to grab it. The next moment, the claw squeezed around the dragon. Despite all the fences, he found himself in the iron grip. The monster squeezed the captive, and Fafnir, though wondered by the power of the enemy, did not stop rushing. Suddenly the cannon came from the bottom. The nuclei were hit right on the turtle, and the vibration reached the wings of the dragon. Adventurers recharged guns without delay. The commander shouted to beat in the unbroken area and focus the fire at a single point. Fafnir could not believe. The people with whom he once at odds now saved his life and struck with coordination. In the body of the dragon, magic boiled. The earthlings directed the flow of force simply into his horns, strengthening his own energy. One of the magicians exclaimed that although she does not know who this girl with horns, and puts the last hope on her, and colleagues readily picked up the energy channel. Fafnir felt a rush of power that he did not dream of. Former enemies became allies, pouring forces into joint protection. Realizing the support, he gathered all the power and glanced the challenge. The turtle did not dare to despise him anymore. The dragon realized that he hesitated for too long and doubted. He softened too much during the seal, but now the softness disappeared. With outstretched wings, burning with a new mana, Fafnir was preparing to pay off the abusers, this time without regret and doubt. Fafnir realized, it is impossible to hesitate anymore. And in the next moment his energy broke out. The turtle fist fell from the inside, cracking from excess power. She saw a miracle. All the views boiled into the dragon, unable to look away. Paying out of Noah silently, Fafnir understood. It was his power that friends are now needed. With a roar that broke the sky, he escaped from the paws of the monster and returned to himself a formidable dragon face. Adventurers have been aware that they were in front of the same legendary Fafnir, walking on the monster he promised. If he does not stop, he will regret his own existence. The next moment, the clawed paws clung to the shell, and the unbearable flame struck the giant body. The commander below immediately commanded to cover the dragon. The detachment agreed without hesitation, focusing on the vulnerable areas. Fafnir clenched and smoked the turtle, forcing her roars and shailing. At the shell above Noah and Alexia, silently followed the brutal fight, realizing that every second for the weight of life. In the heart of Noah, a prayer arrogance was owned, so that Fafnir could withstand and not break before the reality census would end. Alexia felt the incredible mana through Noah. He really rewrites the book of the world. The manuscript, the supreme work of the people of the runes, is able to overlap the laws of being. The girl did not understand that such power now belonged to a man beyond their kind, and reflecting a spooky manifestation. In the air materialized the silhouette shadow of the spirit of darkness, whose figure hangs like an inevitable punishment. Having met Alexia's gaze, the spirit recognized her. He was certain that he destroyed the entire destroyed people during the last war. The girl realized that this darkness is behind most chains of the tragedies that have unfolded. When the shadow moved closer, preparing for the attack, Alexia did not wash away. The spirit with a fierce roar rushed at them, but she, without hesitation, put her foot and repelled the first blow. With the outburst of anger in her eyes, she rushed forward, full of energy to protect Noah from ancient evil. The dark spirit again risen, declaring, "The forces of the book will not be used, and Noah will die here and now." And Alexia covered him with his body, accepting the challenge. There was no retreat. Alexia was an unbreakable wall, realizing that there is no other way. She swore that he would not allow Noah to die, neither now nor in the future. The spirit of darkness, noticing its steadiness, abused that the people of the runes did not learn from mistakes, and stubbornly condemning themselves to destruction. He threatened Alexia with irreversible death and rushed forward, unfolding the black tentacles capable of breaking the space itself. Taking a blow, the girl repelled the dark gust with such a force that even the air fell out of the explosive wave. However, the new bundle of the tentacle was rushed directly to Noah. Alexia rushed to the opposite and intercepted them in a counted centimeters from his face. The spirit of mockingly whispered that it is dangerous to touch his darkness, and darkness began to burn her skin. The black shoots wove in hands, crawling like living snakes, seeking to absorb all the light. Praying for one thing, so that Noah managed to complete the start, she steadily demolished the pain without releasing the tentacle. Meanwhile, Fafnir, ignoring fatigue, poured a flame into the muzzle of the turtle, forcing the beast rod of pain. On the ground, the warriors looked up, not believing that the legendary dragon was beating on their side. And Noah stood among the pair of the Foley, in his hands crystallized power, capable of blocking the world itself. With each rewritten line, energy was fulfilled by the body, approaching the moment of the final victory. A whole constellation of adventurers, each with his own legend, has already gathered around him. Siegfried is a famous dragonfiender whose view forced the most powerful monsters to tremble, watching in silence. There was a Lorenz nearby, Archimag, whose name has long become a symbol of strength and wisdom throughout the magical world. Noah's attention was attracted by another figure, the Elfian Nissa, known as Miss A, restrained and proud to marry. She said indifferent to her that the capital's affairs were not interested in her. The words are too loud next to the wolf Millilir Fenrir, who warned not to speak them aloud. Nissa's rang that reached the peaks only through itself and its beast. Her guilds were famous in the whole of the Spiel arc. Serena, another errand adventurer, felt an internal challenge not to be angry among such a collection of legends. In her imagination, Noah and comrades were already fighting on the forefront. Serena looked anxiously towards the headquarters where Yoon was confidently managed the operation, teaching to the edge, because the future of the whole kingdom was at stake. Meanwhile, June, noticing Princess Claudia, hurried to her, feeling the burden of tremendous responsibility. Claudia thanked for the brilliant command, but June modestly took her eyes. It is certain that she was unworthy of such praise. And concerned princess confessed, "A sleepy turtle is about to get the last line." Yoon proposed evacuation in case of worse. Claudia refused to run away because the warriors were fighting for the kingdom, and its place was among the subjects. Straightening, she stated that as a representative of the king, he has no right to shake the morale of the army. Yoon, moved, almost wept, but Claudia promised quietly, "They will win, and the turtle would fall." One of the guards confirmed that the heart of the princess will not shudder even before the roar of the dragon. It will stand by the very end. Claudia thanked, and the alarm for Gildehand, who went to the front, did not leave her look. In the meantime, the battle flared up. Smoke tightened the sky, almost hiding the sun. The guns roared without stopping, filling the air with the moon of destruction. Gildadan lay on the field. The clothes were torn, the whole body was covered with dust. 2 guards ran up, shouting that they found the commander. The doctor came to him, shaking to bring him. After evaluating the condition, he sent a messenger to the winged dragon to quickly send help. Suddenly Gildadan moaned and opened his eyes, asked where he found himself. The doctor exhaled with relief, thanking the heavens, and quickly began to provide medicine. He explained that during an attempt to restrain the turtle, the commander suffered a heavy blow. Gildadan nodded, remembering the battle. The doctor assured, "The wound is not deadly." He lost consciousness for a moment. Raising, Gildadan apologized for the care, but the doctor replied that it was a trifle compared to his contribution to the defense. Gildadan, still stunned by events, felt he forgets something extremely important. The memory slipped, leaving a cold tangle of anxiety inside. The fingers blindly felt amulet Knushin. The ancient runes on the metal flashed in red heat. He struck a sharp pain in his head, as if someone had broken the seal of memories, and he did not have time to disassemble them. The pain was tolerable, but in an urgent one was a reminder of a promise. He felt that this talisman belonged to someone expensive, but the name stubbornly sank. At the request of the physician, he answered through his teeth, "The head is cracking." However, he refused. It is time to go into battle. And despite protests, he took the winged dragon. The determination is indomitable. Just to the front, immediately. The guards from below were in vain to keep it. The dragon was already carrying the commander to the ominous turtle. Gildaganda's gaze faded into a gloomy monster's shell, which was nurtured by a tremendous mana. The magical vortices rose from its surface like thunder, capable of splitting the earth. Meanwhile, Alexia, almost on the verge of power, was still holding defense against the spirit of darkness. Each new opponent has become more powerful, and its shields were thawed in lightnings. Without a single pause, she repelled the blow, stubbornly refusing to fall. However, the reserves were melting. The barrier around Noah trembles and fad. In the end, the last devastating gust broke the protection. The sphere cracked, and Alexia shouted. The spirit of Predatory came off. Now he will destroy the remains of the people of the runes once and for all. In the sky, this was seen by Gildadan. A single thought broke out in his chest: to destroy the evil that threatens the girl. Boiling the rage, he lifted the light of the 7th circle. A bow of pure, radiant energy was formed in his hands, a dazzling like dawn. The light arrow, which embodied pure power, sowed the shell of the turtle with a dazzling beam, torn the protection of the august spider web. At the same moment, the spirit of darkness dissolved, as if smoke after the storm, leaving no trace. Gildadan flew to the exhausted Alexia and asked anxiously whether everything was fine with it. She was stunned by his father, Noah's father. The realization that Noah did not kill his father had flashed in her eyes when Gildadan remembered that they had already met in the palace. He reproached her for the risk, assuring that he would complete the battle, and Alexia noticed, before her stands a completely different person than the cruel magician of the past. Once strict and ruthless, now it seemed soft, doubtful, and internal struggle. These metamorphoses prompted her to think, Gildadan's attitude to Noah has inevitably changed. So she offered to unite the strength and protect Noah, because only together they will overcome the darkness. In memory of his son's eyes, the Maga's eyes expanded, as if he heard about him for the first time, and it scared Alexei. He pointed to Noah's figure behind the girl and asked, "Is that the one you are talking about?" Stunned, she asked if Gildadan really remembers her own son. The answer, "This is impossible," was accompanied by a sharp attack of pain. Alexia mentioned the confession of Noah. "I have no father anymore," and realized that he was magically memorized. At this point, the spirit of darkness thickened before them, laughing at their pathetic attempt to resist. Gildadan has realized, even the 7th circle of light did not destroy the enemy. Nonsense. Alexia explained that it was this spirit that called a sleepy turtle and stands for all tragedies. In her voice, he was sorry for Noah. She looked at the magician and asked for help. Only they have a chance together. Gildadan, not shaking anything, but feeling the girl's determination, nodded. "I will support you if you want it." Alexia thanked, although in the heart he was not to restore the memories. But it is necessary to fight despite the loss. The spirit of darkness, majestic and formidable, is shaken that their quantity does not matter. The darkness will reprint any power. Gildadan, illuminating the palms of a hot fire, stood before Noah, feeling the forgotten daddy courage return through the darkness. In the midst of the battle, where the flames and magic were intertwined into a solid whirlwind, in the heart of Gildadan again and again the only name broke out, Noah, as if familiar. He tried in vain to remember where he heard the name, and why the young face caused a strange feeling of ancient closeness, as if a memories through the fog. Each thought was in the darkness of oblivion, but the acquaintance did not let go, like a scar hidden behind the veil of charm. Alexia's scream, "NOA!" He returned the magician to reality, and he gathered his will in his fist, preparing for a decisive collision. He lifted the wall of the flame, at the same time a sword and a shield, and stopped the black arrows of the spirit, turning the flames into a whirlwind of deadly sparks. But, holding the defense, he felt Mana Noah, like a river, joined the turtle shell, encountered invisible barriers. Hildendand realized, without protective seals, excessive force can break the young man faster than any weapon of the enemy. The shadow gripped from behind the spirit of darkness rushed to Noah. The black blade flashed in the air. The blade swept only a fiery ghost that broke out and melted. The illusion of a third circle created by a magician to win time. The puzzled spirit did not realize the replacement, and Gildendand called him a gorgeous bover, which he pushed on the children's focus. The fierce darkness again rushed to the attack, but again grabbed only Mirage. The real warriors have already changed their position. The magician laughed loudly, asking how many more strokes would go into the void, and felt the advantage of every minute. In a fierce spirit, he broke the fire, destroying the illusory shadows, and the real trinity retreated even further, gaining precious minutes. Hildendand was satisfied with the whisper that the trap worked, but looked at Noah, saw exhaustion, dangerous, like a crack in the icy dam. Alexia wanted to share mania, but the magician immediately stopped her. She barely holds on and could go out like a candle in the wind. The decision came instantly. He will give some of his own strength to his son, let the price be. The doubts were determined in the flames. Putting his palm on Noah's chest, Hildendand launched the flow of energy, surprised by the adamant faith of the young man in the impossible. The magician ordered Alexia to watch the spirit of darkness until they overcome both the turtle and the evil that hammed over the kingdom. Alexia nodded, squeezing a sword with the runes of light. In her eyes she was desirable to protect those who loves, despite her own wounds. Light, flames, and faith were confused together. Before the decisive blow, all three stood side by side, ready to meet the darkness without the slightest fear. Hildendand looked at Noah, and a shock broke out in the pupils. The movements and mana of the boy were surprisingly echoed. In these terms, in the stream of magic, he suddenly recognized the notes of the Reina, his wife. This feeling was too similar to be accidental. The shrill pain stretched his head, and for a moment everything drowned in the darkness of oblivion. He turned away, fearing that emotions would destroy the focus at the most critical moment. But the memories of the Rhine broke through again. He pulled out a medallion photo and saw her smiling face like he was living. Before her eyes, a day when she woke him up at a desk, where he fell asleep over a treatise from magic. She jokingly blamed that through grimoire, he forgets about her own health. She warned that the future child will take his habit of sleeping for parchment, so you need to learn to rest with her. He then laughed, promised to be careful. They met at the Royal Academy of Magic. The Rhine, a simple girl, work and perseverance surpassed the aristocrat of Hildeganda and entered the first in the stream. At first, relations were a continuous competition. Aristocratic honor against an independent character. Each dispute was only strengthened by their connection, becoming a strange ground for mutual respect. Subsequently, the quarrels gave way to the feelings they could no longer be ignored. Despite the resistance of families and social conditions, young lovers defended their right and enlisted. The marriage was also not easy. The origin remained a stumbling block, but they stubbornly proved the sincerity of love. Somehow the Reina, holding a bunch of books, asked what the volumes were. He replied that they were grimoire from a fiery and icy school. The duty of the descendant of Aldeheims is to master the basic elements, although this is not enough for the title of a real master. She smiled and asked if he thought about the name for the baby. Usually a serious Gildanda was filmed and confessed that he had not yet chosen, but he would soon be looking for. He really got to find options for a boy and a girl, and going to the Reina, did not even know how soon the world would turn over. Entering the room, Hildendand Koloff. Reina lay on the floor, the forces left her body. He fell side by side, and the doctor who examined the woman in childbirth stated a critical condition. There was almost no chance without immediate assistance. Blood retreated from the face of the magician. He knew about the fragile health of his wife, but did not imagine that she could be so defenseless. The realization that all the joint moments can be broken right now. The heart was stabbing, but he did not allow panic to win. Holding the tears, Gildendand whispered, that the Rhine could protect the forces, the puzzling of it. Everything will be fine. The doctors will make the impossible. Remembering the purpose of the visit, he squeezed his smile and shared his chosen name for the child, Noah. The Rhine answered a warm, though exhausted smile. It is a beautiful name. At that moment, the ray of hope touched his heart. But then she was barely audible, whispering that she was afraid not to see her son's eyes. The words pierced the soul of the magician like an icy blade. He exclaimed her name filled with pain, and the Rhine only apologized for all the hassle that she had caused her beloved. Hildendand squeezed her hand, repeating that she loved her above all, but the words seemed powerless in the face of death. In the tired eyes of the Rhine, the gentle light was still glowing. The tears rolled their cheeks, and she whispered in love. The magician fell to her hand, pressing it to her chest, trying to keep at least a crumb of her warmth. Soon only a baby was crying in the room. The Gildendan's world collapsed. Dreams of a common future with the Rhine were scattered on the powder, but she left him the most valuable thing, their son. Noah quietly folds, and his father leaned over his wife's body. Tears dropped on a calm face. The bitterness of the loss clarified the heart. He swore to be a better father than he was a man, for the sake of the Rhine's memory. Looking at the infant, Gildendand was being called. An unheard-of magical power raged in a tiny creature. The streams of pure man were felt almost physically, forcing the magician to hold the breath from the grip. No magician he met had such perfectly aligned meridians. Nature created a real miracle, but the gravity broke through the delight. The Rhine sacrificed life for the birth of this incredible boy. Looking at Noah, Gildendand shuddered. He realized that he was never the dad of the son, and unreasonably put the guilt for the death of the Rhine on the baby. 5 years have passed until they met again, and the young Noah had already demonstrated the unique abilities that the spirit was fascinated. Hearing about the talent of the son to decipher the ancient texts, Gildendand felt how the dream once came to life with new pain. Passing Noah's own Manu, he saw in amazement the guy was stronger, like swallowing or heavenly fire. But in the reckon of flames and magic in the memory of the magician, all the days of his past broke out, along with the sins he tried to forget. He remembered how Noah himself repelled in the mountain, and realized that the pain caused to his son returned to him by himself. He was broken by repentance. He dropped by Noah, realizing that he had never become the man and father who was to be. Tears erased a strict mask. Between the sobs he admitted that he had destroyed his son's future, and forgive himself late. Images of humiliations that he showered the guy returned sharp fragments. Each frame sting worse than the sword, but there was no time for the rest. In the sky he roared the spirit of darkness, crying that he found their fragile truth. Alexia rushed to mute, but almost no strength is left. She ordered Gildenda to flee from Noah, though in his eyes doubt. He asked what would be with her. The girl cut off. "Save her son, don't look back," and her voice sounded like steel. Grasping Noah, the magician rushed into the retreat, and the spirit mocked that the fate of the runes had long been resolved. Alexia, cruising the wings of the runic glow, blocked the path of darkness, giving friends a chance to break out. She shouted that she would not seem, even if the path into the abyss, and the first rushed into the attack, cutting the darkness with the last forces. Hildendand, carrying Noah, felt a heart exploding with a mixture of guilt and determination. He should save his son anything. The strokes were roaring behind. The spirit threatened to destroy Alexia and all the inheritance of the runes, and her figure burned her indomitable courage. The girl rose above, caught the black blade and pushed the darkness, like the last shield between evil and hope. The spirit of wheezing about the inevitable extermination. But Alexia replied that even the ashes of their people are lit by light of resistance. Far ahead of Hildendand looked around. In the shine of the barrier, the silhouette of Alexia stood unbreakable, and he squeezed Noah, swore never to betray his family again. Hildendand stopped, realizing. While he was running away, Alexia fought alone on Sam. He squeezed his throat. Having taken Noah to a safe place, he sat side by side, thinking how everything rolled into such an abyss. Despair, life is broken, and to look at his son to look scary, every memory fired. He remembered every time he destroyed the will of the boy, considering control. The apology is no longer enough. A shaky thought was in the head. Maybe disappear and no longer wounded? But the lounge interrupted a wild laughter. The spirit of darkness lifted Alexia, squeezing her hand like a doll. He promised a pardon if the girl would give Noah. The answer was flame. Never. The darkness came off, confident that the runes would not change the turtle's fate, and pulled the black loop to the throat of Alexia. Suddenly, it was familiar. "Let her go!" Hildendan returned, burned but unwavering. The girl shuddered. The magician was on the verge, but in her eyes she blazed unbreakable. He still returned. The spirit laughed, calling him a madman. Hildendan assured that for Noah, he built a protective barrier. Alexia did not believe the words. Every second could cost life here. The darkness greeted the magician with a look filled with disdain, and she had a zero value. Hildendan was bitten by the fault for the death of the Rhina, and the former hatred of his son, and could no longer flee. Gloomy, he whispered. Enough. Now his duty to love Noah and protect. The spirit broke into a cry, but the magician stood up. The flames danced around. I am the strongest fiery magician. The words were beaten like gong. Even darkness froze for a moment, feeling the change of wind. Hildendan became between Alexia and the darkness. Breasts are burned with repentance and determination. He challenged, try to go through me. This time I will not retreat. The sparks risen on the night when the old sinner first fought with the enemy, but for his own temptation heart. Hildendan's eyes flashed with determination when he said the spell, capable of burning the very essence of darkness. The spirit of darkness laughed, calling these words a miserable joke, and the magician, ignoring the mockery, apologized to Noah and the Rhina, raising his hand filled with burning mana. He renounced the titles and glory, and called the flames who lived in his blood for centuries, releasing them into the world through the darkest corners of the universe. The spirit, notwithstanding the heat, released Alexia, and fell to the ground, and the enemy was constricted, whether the magician really thinks that they would be allowed to complete the spell. The black blade rushed in the air, and using the same illusion, Hildendan moved away from the blow, forcing the darkness to reap the darkness into the void. Having realized that the enemy was trapped for the second time, the magician was fulfilled. The self. Confidence of the darkness made her vulnerable. He disappeared into the outbreak of heat and appeared behind the back of the spirit, calling the original fire that burned from the creation of the world. A tremendous sphere of energy exploded in the palms, the quintessence of destructive flames. Granite intention glowed in the pupils. The hands were squeezed as if the apocalypse light source. It was a meteoric punishment, the 10th, the limit level of fiery magic. The magician knew that the power of this explosion was not even subject to the charm of the turtle, so it would only impress the darkness. The sphere, breaking the fabric of space, crashed into the spirit, destroying its essence and all around. After falling into a flurry of his own flame, Hildendan felt as if the forces were melting like a wax under the sun. There is one desire, to ask Noah for forgiveness for all the sins of the past. The steps slowed down. The magician struck, and Alexia put his back to restrain his fall. Exhausted, he closed his eyes. The girl called his magic majestic and, for the first time, his father, after which he was exhausted. But the smoke clubs sounded an ominous wheezing. The spirit of darkness survived, full of fierce and disdain. He put in a new, even more terrible likeness, confessing that for the first time in a century, he is forced to show a true face. The powerful aura clenched the earth under the feet of Alexia, as if the reality trembled from his strength. He solemnly proclaimed that in 100 years, no one was forcing him to go so far. But now everyone will feel his limitless darkness. The spirit of darkness, some of his own invincibility, rushed to Alexia, spreading a giant mouth and promising to finish their torment in a minute. The girl's eyes were rounded by horror. It seemed like an end in a step. But suddenly, the silhouette looked out of the darkness and, apologizing his hand, whispered who had slowed down. When the spirit was already overhanging over Gilder and Alexia, a dazzling ray, like a lightning, pierced his chest. The light was cut into the black essence, tearing it at incredible speed and accuracy. The ray was released. When the glow was gone, he stepped forward, staring at the exhausted figure of friends. With a clear surprise, the guy said whether it was the same great spirit of darkness. Alexia heard an explanation. Removing the perfect protection of the turtle, Noah opened the enemy for magical attacks. The wave of relief covered the girl, but Noah was already looking at his father. He saw the exhausted Hildendan but rested the question. Now, every second is decisive. At this time, a crack appeared on the turtle shell. Noah confidently suggested that it was a consequence of the magic of his father, and suggested to move a safe distance. Full of determination, he picked up Hildendan on his back and bounced from the epicenter of the battle, preparing for counterattack. The tortoise issued a shrill roar, and its shell went with a thick web of cracks, asping under the pressure of magic. Yun watched, stunned. The ancient creature was finally destroyed. The warrior nearby reported that although the process is partial, it is the fruit of their efforts. The commander realized that only Noah was able to move the impossible, and at that moment Princess Claudia approached. Claudia's gaze was solid. "Let's win now, or never." Yun nodded. Her heart pounded like a drum. Lorenz appeared in the sky, the court archimag, balancing on the broom. Inspired, he focused all the manu and released the lightning of the third circle directly into the center of the shell. The electrical blade cut the turtle body of the turtle, and Lorenz was stunned that magic was behaving differently. Surprisingly, the turtle not only absorbed the blows, now she turned them twice as powerful, causing herself even more fatal harm. This moment became historical. Experienced magician Lorenz realized that such phenomena were almost unprecedented, and even his efforts are dimmed by what Noah has done, curling the enormous element. Noah stood near Alexia, and nearby, an unconscious guildendant. A light signal broke out above the battlefield. The young man confidently assured that reinforcement is already on the approach. It is only necessary to stay a little. But despite the battle, he felt that the connection with his father should be cut away. The protective erasing of memory is no longer working. It is time to place dots. However, even among the hell of the battle, Noah could not expel the painful memories of Hildegand. Alexia Versik said that his father really regretted and begged forgiveness, sincerely recognizing the harm caused to his son. These words touched Noah's soul. Now he could not forgive immediately, and shared how during the rubbing, he saw strange fragments of the past. It turned out that his father sincerely loved his mother. The discovery that turned the old boy's old ideas. Noah realized that his perception was false, and the bitterness retreated, leaving pure sadness. He remembered how a decisive moment Hildendon gave him his own manu. The young man would have died without that gift. After the battle, he decided, Noah, you will have to talk to the father and try to restore the lost. Noticing Alexia's wounds, he insisted that she rest. The girl was arguing, and eventually sighed and agreed. That's little sense. Meanwhile, the battle with a drowsy turtle reached the climax. Fafnir tirelessly collapsed the fiery volleys on the monster. The dragon wondered how Noah and his comrades managed to break through the impenetrable shell of this creature. Suddenly, the turtle, feeling the enemy's weakness, hit with horrible force, rushing Fafnir to the ground. The frightened exclamations came below. The commander rushed to the rescue, and the soldier stopped him. A senseless attack would only worsen the destruction. Fafnir, consciousness, rose from dust, clasped his jaw, and ignoring the pain, rushed into the sky again. Crossing the air, he overcame fatigue and crashed into the enemy's shell. Each new blow split the shell. Even with the iron skin of the turtle began to settle. The adventurers looked below, opened their mouths. Meanwhile, the Elfian Nissa, Miss A, rose on her majestic families, preparing to join the decisive assault. Nissa, sitting on the back of Fenrir, watched closely at a giant creature and, inspired by what she saw, leaned to the wolf to see the battlefield better. Suddenly, her gaze stopped at Fafnir's collar. Surprise engulfed the Elfean. This wild, formidable dragon turned out to be someone's pet. Interestingly showing Fenrir collar, she asked if they were familiar. The wolf, with a touch of enthusiasm, confirmed that he had once fought side by side with a dragon. Fenrir approached. His eyes flashed with fiery glitter when their views crossed. Fafnir straightened his wings and grung a rude joke, calling Fenrir good puppies. In response, the wolf called him toasted with a lizard, and threatened to stretch ice, but Nissa broke the altercation, reminding the battle. The guns rattled further, but one of the adventurers noted. The barrier of the turtle was weaker. There was a chance to finish the monster. At the signal, the magicians activated the chain seal, woven from light and runes. The glowing shackles, like iron snakes, clasped the monster's paws instantly, shaking his movements. The turtle froze, but for a short time. The chains seductively creaked under the titanic force. Seconds stretched with eternity. One ring cracked, the other. Even this fire magic did not hold back the beast. Nissa rushed into the attack. She struck a blow, and she lacked the strength to punch a strong shell. Her fierce enthusiasm was scratched, but it could not finally stop the monster. Other adventurers joined the elves, supporting the pressure. They beat the turtle as if the water was sharpening a stone, gradually destroying its defense. Every new blow to Lunko responded in the ground. The roar of the beast shook the air, but the cracks widened. Fafnir and Fenrir, exhausted, but not conquered, burned and freezed the shell, trying to slow the enemy. The recess became more piercing, and the vulnerable flesh was already looked in the cracks. Jun, with Claudia watching from the distance, felt the story of the story. The world was changing in his eyes. Yun inadvertently mentioned that long before Rastia there was a city-state. Now only the moon is the past. But today her land wrote the legend again. Perkish, the so-called the grand center of force and culture, built by the tribe of runes, which is the rule of these lands. Only ruins that store memory remained from the city, although the time and the crushing storms almost erased them. Yun, barely trembling with his voice, told Claudia, as the city had a heavenly tower in the heyday, which stood to the sky in the center of Kirkshi. At the same time, there was a starting mechanism in the hands of Yun. The fingers rolled through the button, and near the commanders in a hurry gave orders to retreat. The sleepy turtle constantly broke through the last line of defense, translating surgery into the final phase. Alexia, on the other flank, followed focused. Yun was grateful to her for his trust and participation in the plan. Feeling how the world is changing every second, Yun pressed the button, accepting the inevitability. She returned to Claudia and firmly said that time to retreat. The princess nodded with the same unwavering. Yun thought, if they did not go to the ruins with Noah, if they did not meet Alexia, everything would go the other way. She realized that their fates were intertwined, and every act of the past has determined the present day. Without those decisions, the kingdom would fall. Suddenly under the tower, the explosion thundered. The earth and the air shuddered, as if the foundation of the world cracked. In the next moment, the giant structure collapsed, heading simply on a carotid turtle. The tower fell relentlessly, and it seemed to be no longer avoided. Stone blocks and steel struck on a colossal body. The fortress shuddered at the shockwave. Yun's heart was pounding while she watched with Claudia. Would it be enough to put an end to the battle? But the turtle, curled up under the rubble, suddenly released a powerful roar and, spreading her paws, threw away the debris, like light chips. The earth shook under the feet of Yun. It was then that Fafnir appeared nearby. Without delay, he announced that he was to solve the issue, and took off, cutting the air with huge wings. Approaching, the dragon dumped a solid pillar of flames that cut the sky. The fiery ray was thrusted directly into the turtle mouth, pouring everything around the dazzling glow, as if the earth itself was lit by his heat. A powerful heat that broke out of the turtle's mouth took out everyone near his feet. The flames subsided, and Fafnir gasped, decreasing rapidly, no longer left. The whispers explained that he reached the limit and began to fall. Yun was not lost. She rushed forward and picked up the dragon just in the air. It was then that the adventurer on the tower, looking into the spy pipe, exclaimed with surprise, "The sleepy turtle no longer moves." The news of the victory was instantly spread, and the hearts of all overwhelmed the joy. The warriors welcomed each other. It seemed that the terrible battle was over. But the spirit of darkness was not defeated. He is frantic with the idea that people have won, and the turtle that came to life by him is overthrown. The rage grew. There is anything to return the control and take revenge on the wounds caused by Noah. The spirit forced the turtle to give him his body, and began to dispose of him. Noah, Alexia, Yun, Claudia, and others stunned watched as the beast rises again and heads to the capital. The new spectacle was terrified. The turtle became even more terrifying, moving with incredible force, crashing everything around. It seemed like nothing. Yun could not believe her own eyes. Among the adventurers of the punch, people rushed to run, saving their lives. Claudia immediately ordered all the troops to retreat. The continuation of the battle only multiplies the ruins. She ordered the evacuation of the capital, as the consequences may be catastrophic. Nissa, sitting on Fenrir, watched with anxiety how the situation came out of control. If the monster moves further, the elven village would also be shot. Fenrir asked if they would defend the home. The elfish, fading, whispered that against such power, almost a deity, a chance. The turtle, shrouded in the darkness, spread the mouth. Rays of continuous darkness were rushed to the ground, erasing everything in their path. The spirit of darkness inside the beast was abused. The fear and despair of the people nourished him even more. His goal is to absorb the world with shadows until the last light fades. Now it seemed closer than ever. Fear appeared. But Noah and Alexia did not stop. They ran through the forest. The earth trembled from every blow to the turtle. Then Noah asked if the spirit of darkness with the monster merged. Alexia confirmed the pain. He was aware of the awareness. He had to attack earlier until the beast was weak. But now it was late. Noah stopped, holding back fear, and firmly decided that it was not the end. He mentioned the power of the Book of Peace, which could reveal the enemy's weakness. He closed his eyes, focusing all the magic, and when he opened, there were no books. The heart squeezed from anxiety, as if something important slipped out of memory, losing in darkness. Alexia gently called it, noticing the confusion. She has not yet realized everything, but felt. The power that Noah tried to use did not belong to him. Her voice was trembling. She explained that Noah, although related to the book, is not a full member of the tribe, and therefore his strength is limited. In despair, he asked if there was a way to increase his ability, but Alexia only shook his head. She did not know the answer herself. But the fact that Noah received the power of the book at all was a miracle. Thoughts swept in the head, but intuition suggested that the exit is very close. Suddenly, he silently turned and went away. He ordered Alexia to stay and not risk. He had to oppose the enemy without the help of a book. Alexia called him without understanding the decision. She did not believe that he could. But Noah was adamant. He promised to return alive, and asked her not to forget about this promise. Alexia felt everything turned in the middle. The eyes were filled with tears. There was an image of a father who once left, and no longer returned. She did not want to lose anyone again. I couldn't just let go. At this point, he activated his skill. The sword rose to the sky. Alexia no longer hesitated. She used her own power, flew into the air, and stood. She felt her body filled with magic. Noah looked around, met her gaze. She said with determination in her voice that she realized how to strengthen his magic. After the death of her father, the throne of Kirkshish remained empty. She, the princess of the Run tribe, could convey it. Putting her hand on his chest, she decided that this is the necessary step. They have to get married. And then Noah will become a king, gaining full access to the peace book. Without hesitation of a second, Alexia quickly, kiss. At that moment, memories have filled her heart since childhood. Alexia remembered the words of his father. For the people, the runes are the most expensive personal act that is given only to those who are really precious. She was saying that she now asks for Noah Aldeheim of the eternal patronage of the tribe. With a smile, Alexia retreated one step. Noah, stunned and embarrassed, looked at her silently. She apologized for the suddenness, and explained that the decision to marry was their common step. Noah stood, unable to immediately grasp the depth of the event. Suddenly, a magical aura exploded around him. The body was filled with unknown power. Alexia explained. Now Noah is the king of the tribe of runes. With the title, he was entitled to use the Peace Book of Peace. Standing at the epicenter of the vortex, Noah felt like thoughts, feelings, and the soul itself merge with a long-standing energy. At the same moment, the Book of Peace materialized before them. Alexia said confidently, "Now they will certainly win." Noah looked at the manuscript with unprecedented confidence. Meanwhile, a turtle, wrapped in a sinister aura, smashed the capital. The spirit of darkness watched a cold look, tasting the panic of the locals, which were preparing for the inevitable death. In the next second, he released a new stream of icy darkness, swallowing everything in the way. On one of the towers, Noah unfolded a book of peace. Fingers slid the line by line, and he began to rewrite reality, as if nature itself obeyed his will. The darkness that broke out of the monster's mouth sharply changed the direction and deviated sideways. The adventurers at the bottom watched as a black stream, still fatal, scattering, bypassing the streets. Without hiding, Noah put mass healing. The warriors felt the wounds tightened and the forces were returning. He then applied spatial transfer, sending everyone to a safe sector outside the devastating zone. The turtle, still distorted by the darkness, glared at the tower with contempt. Only Noah interceded her way. At this fateful moment they both realized, the final duel is inevitable. And the fate of the capital depended on the king who held a book of peace in his hands. The spirit of the darkness, having fallen from the inner tortoise, sinfully remarked that he never waited for one of the runes to call the power of the peace book again. But, they say, it is enough to kill Noah, and the desired power will get to him. Noah firmly replied that today he would put an end to the darkness and its approaches. The spirit just grows up, inviting the guy to try. Without hesitation, Noah grabbed a light blade and directed him directly into the heart of the darkness. But on one blow he did not stop. He unfolded the book of peace and rewrote the lines. The swords of the light were multiplied. The cloud of radiant blades, like a star army, rushed to a dark essence. The spirit laughed mockingly, calling the attack by baby fun, which is not able to withstand true darkness. Slashing magic, he easily reflects a shining shield. The light blades were scattered with sparks without harm. At the bottom, adventurers and sorcerers watched with delight and horror. In the light of the blades, Noah seemed a living miracle. Jun, looking at, recognized the figure in the glow. The ray clearly cleared, and blood was buried from the nose. The mana was rapidly exhausted, the body weakened. The spirit of darkness grunted, claiming that without sufficient power the book of peace was empty. But Noah did not give up. He realized that the census of reality requires tremendous energy. Looking at the page, he touched his name and moved the lines, melting his own magical flow. destroying the boundaries of the possible. At that moment, he felt the force growing to incomprehensible heights. His aura emitted an unsurpassed power. The former restrictions were melted. The energy was immense. The spirit of darkness was silent as the turtle under the rule of Noah lost its dark power. Yoon noticed that now the guy was completely dominant. Noah lightning broke into the attack. The spirit, stunned, asked who he became. The young man ordered to surrender without a book of peace. The spirit was sophisticated, still a certain power, and wondered if Noah was confident in victory. He just shrugged, preparing for the solution. The excited fury of Mark released the streams of blackness, reminding that he once killed the King of Runes, who also possessed a book. The black clouds were sticking over the capital, wrapping the sky. The decisive battle for the light was just beginning. The sky above the city is blackening. The pages of the book began to darken, absorbing the light as the night devours the day. Noah looked at the manuscript with panic. The heart squeezed. Did the glow disappear without a gate? The spirit of darkness smiled and stated that his own darkness with the nucleus of the world was sleeping. From now on, the peace book is inaccessible, Noah. The black curtain continued to spread, absorbing the streets of the capital. Sudden shock, the spirit rejected Noah. He crashed into the tower, the stones thundered around. The darkness did not stop. He again gathered in the attack. Heaving in the city, his voice roared that everyone should die, drowning in the dark. The adventurers humbled, preparing to the end, and Noah, despite the blow, stood up. The forces were melting, and the book was beyond the reach. He looked again at her blackened pages. At first glance, they seemed dead. But something made the young man look more closely, and he realized the surface is not solid. It is covered with microsymbols. The patterns were so small and complex that Noah had never seen this. And if these are really symbols, they can be deciphered. Remembering the days of lone training, he realized no minute passed in vain. His talent to read ancient times was intended for this moment. Meanwhile, the spirit of darkness, a certain victory, mockingly announced that the world belongs to him. But suddenly he noticed. The darkness is thinning, and the rays of light break through it. Noah stood on the tower, which was illuminated, and his magic did not allow the darkness to win. He shouted the enemy who used the absolute protection of the turtle's shell against the dark. He explained that the fabric of the world is woven from symbols, and the Book of Peace gives power to rewrite anything. At the bottom, the adventurers looked, not believing the eyes. The spirit of darkness did not understand, as Noah still managed to master power. The young man explained that the turtle shell absorbs magic, but does not destroy it. And now this power is light. The turtle's shell constantly pulled the darkness, absorbing the power of the spirit of darkness and saturating it with aura. Its surface gradually lit up, reflecting the darkness that had just swallowed, and flashed an inner glow. Seeing this, Noah smiled. The shell not only absorbed the darkness, but also was able to direct the transformed energy against the enemy. He did not have time to finish the idea of how the shell exploded sharply with a powerful jet of mana, which struck simply into the essence of the darkness inside. "You chose a false opponent!" Noah exclaimed. "Otherwise, the world would have been under your yoke for a long time." The spirit of darkness screamed in pain. His shell crashed. Even the powerful essence could not withstand such a blow. In his eyes, he missed doubt. Is a person capable of such? He remained the same. But the world around, no. People have become stronger. Their power hid not only in magic but also in knowledge, experience gained by generations. It was then that the Book of Peace in the hands of Noah slammed and disappeared, fulfilled her mission. He thanked the artifact silently. Feeling the right moment, the king rose into the sky, heading to the spirit that tried to recover. Noah's body was illuminated by mana flames. There was a steel confidence in the voice. "Your end has come." He concentrated power and released the most powerful technique, absolute flames. The spirit, absorbed by the hellish fire, howled in torment. Noah stood calmly in the center of the fiery vortex, already knowing about the victory. "It's the finale," said his cry, and the flame wave broke out the darkness itself. The essence of the enemy swung and began to break up, losing control of herself. Yun and Claudia looked, holding his breath. The spirit was melting in his eyes like smoke in the wind. All adventurers monitored the epic duel, unable to look away. When the darkness disappeared, the turtle fell with a roar, shaking the capital. A threat that hung for so long collapsed with it. The wave of relief and joy swept among the crowd. They won. The sleepy turtle was overthrown. Noah hanged in the air, calm and focused, whispering, "I have promised. The world is protected." Noah did not have time to regain his eyelids. The forces left the body instantly. Yun and Claudia, stunned, watched as he faints and began to fall. Serena rushed forward, begging, "Just hold on!" But Alexia appeared like a storm, cutting the air. Noah was almost touched the earth. Exhausted, he could neither protect nor take off. For the hair before the blow, the girl rushed down, catching up with his fall. At the last moment, she picked up the young man, hugged, and both struck the ground. Alexia accepted all the impetus on herself, leaving Noah almost intact. As they lay, the spirit of darkness came out of the turtle ruins, roaring over the destroyed city. He mockingly assured he would return at least 100, though 1,000 years in order to take revenge on Noah's descendants. And suddenly, a glowing arrow crashed into the darkness after the turtle. The spirit twisted in pain. It was the holy arrow of Hildeganda. The magician felt that the enemy was now unusually weak. Without hiding, he released the second arrow, piercing the essence of the darkness through. The third arrow hit, and the spirit was stuck, begging for the agreement and promising boundless power. For a moment, the magician hesitated, listening to the attractive promises. But this turned out to be not enough. Gildendand launched another projectile of light. If he came years ago, it may have whispered, but now is too late. The spirit was scattered on a black ash. The magician waved his hand, stopping the spell, and felt mana melted like a dawn fog. He looked at his palm and turned to the Rhina quietly. "A little more, beloved." His voice trembles. "Your son saved the world. I called it weak, and now I stand in front of the strongest magician. Hildenden for the first time really realized that the title of the strongest in the world is right now. The name of the boy, like an echo, widowed the palace until someone asked him to lie down for another minute. Returning to his senses, Noah slowly opened his eyes. At first everything seemed to sleep. Looking at, he recognized Yun's estate. Even exhausted, felt strange peace. On the floor, leaning into the bed, Alexei dreamed. Noah stood carefully. Just then the door opened, and in the girl's likeness, Fafnir came with an interesting glitter in his eyes. In a casual tone, the dragon said that the battle was spectacular. Having learned that only 1.5 days had passed since the victory, Noah seemed to be surprised that he had come for the whole age. Fafnir added that when Noah fainted, he was rescued by Alexia, so the young man should be grateful to her. Looking out the window, Noah asked about the city. Fafnir smiled. "The reconstruction is boiling and people praise his name. Fairy-in-laws flew into the room, they help with the wounded, and the residents thank you from the heart." When asked why Fafnir was still in the human likeness, he replied, "He does not want to scare the residents while volunteering." Noah smiled. At that moment, Alexia woke up, and he was quietly apologizing that he woke her up. She lifted her gaze. She was surprised, seeing Noah on her feet. Serena entered the room and exclaimed happily that she was happy to see him in his senses. Yun appeared afterwards. Noah warmed them warmly. He did not know that both were fighting on the front. Serena immediately tied a lively conversation about the rebuilding, and Alexia watched silently, sitting at the edge of the bed. In her eyes, she had a shadow of jealousy when she looked at a carefree Serenium. Subsequently, Noah and Alexia appeared before the king. The monarch met them with a harsh look and said that Yun had already told him everything. The king expressed their delight and declared Alexia was awarded the title of Magician 2 class, and Noah, Maga 1 class, the highest among the wizards of the kingdom. Noah thanked and noticed Alexia's embarrassment, explained that it is one of the highest charm which should be taken pride. The monarch particularly thanked for the salvation of Claudia's daughter. Noah confessed that he did not know her origin during the battle. The king, stroking his beard, gloomfully added that he wanted to discuss the future of Noah and his father. He repeated the rumors. Hildendand renounced his son and expelled him from home. If the truth, the father must bear the trial. Noah tilted his head. Everything was like that. But he did not allow the theme to end with revenge. Raising, the young man strongly stated, his father changed. He looked at Alexia, and after a short pause confirmed. Noah told how the mother died during childbirth, and because of that loss his father was angry. For this, he does not keep his evil and asks for mercy. The king's face was softened. He asked if Noah would have simple forgiveness. The guy nodded, convinced of the correct step. Claudia recalled the next meeting. The king, as soon as possible, thanked Noah again for the salvation of the kingdom. Rising, the monarch wished them well-being and released a gesture. The guards asked Noah and Alexia to follow them. They were surprised to look, but they moved the corridor. They opened the door and, outwardly, the high balcony met them as a unanimous humus. Thousands of people clapped and exclaimed thanks, filling the air with a triumphant homon. Noah with Alexia straightened, their hearts ignited pride. Their faces shone with genuine gratitude. The crowd thanked for the destruction of the sleepy turtle. Two heroes met and realized that the efforts were not in vain. Yun and Serena stood side by side. Their features glowed with pride in a common victory. Nissa smiled on Fenrir's back, contemplating the festive scene. The extraordinary quest, Harm on the Sleepy Turtle, ended. All the fighting and sacrifice led to this moment of glory. Suddenly the estate sounded loud. "Noah, are you already going?" Yun's impatient voice froze in silence. Everyone looked around. Noah, already on the threshold, only nodded and smiled in response. New ways were waiting ahead, and the promise remained unbreakable.